Hey guys, how y'all doing today? Oh, where'd I put that? You would think that I'd be all ready to go and off to the races and all that today, but nice calm day today. Spent the day with my little pug for the most part, right? Give him some scritches and some loves and some hugs, and he's got some peanut butter over there. So if you start to hear some scrabbling off in the corner, it's because he's gone and he's starting to do some licks. So let's get this thing kicked off, shall we? We're streaming today, we're streaming today. I hope you're doing fine. There's so many streams for us to see, but this one here is mine. Hey Misty, I hope that you're happy. I hope that you're well. Now come on and join me. Watch the world go to hell as we are streaming away. We're streaming today. Let's stream today. Oh, that was kind of a calm one. I feel like calm. I feel calm right now. I don't feel like I'm erratic or losing my mind or anything like this. Even as the world is sort of exploding around us, I definitely feel like there's this like settling in almost that's happening with me. Well, that'll change soon, I'm sure of it, right? As everything starts to ramp right up. We'll see. I think one of the things that's really leading to that kind of sense of calm is just that, like, the election seems to be over, right? It seems to be over. Like, we're waiting for, like, the official declaration, right? We're waiting for the stamp to come down and all that. But, like, it looks as though people have settled into their decision. And it looks as though the decision is, by the populace, no change, right? Like, instead of it being, hope and change, it's literally like everything stays as it is right now. Which, I mean, that's hardly surprising, isn't it? Like, I think that people, even if you thought that, oh, Justin Trudeau, he called this election, it's so stupid and pointless, let's get rid of him and all this kind of stuff. Like, even if you thought that way, I think that people don't really like changing government amidst crises. Right? Like, people don't like changing government amidst crisis. And I think people are more or less pleased with the state of the minority configuration that exists. I think most people, including like the dyed-in-the-wool, die-hard, like liberal and conservative types, actually do rather like minority governments. I think that minority governments themselves are quite popular across Canada. People, hey Lonnie, how you doing today? Good to see you. And so I think that Canadians are more than happy to keep things in this sort of minority government configuration. And that means that this next year is going to be very interesting. It'll be very interesting to see. And minority governments are more interesting. Like, from my perspective, where I'm sitting here reporting on my perspective of the political strata and the political system, minority governments are far more interesting to talk about than majority governments, right? It just goes to show how indecisive we are, though, which could be worse. I mean, and indecision is actually kind of baked in. Like, I think that people, like, the younger generations are done with the liberals and the conservatives, right? That the liberals and the conservatives have done everything they can to alienate people under the age of 40. Both parties have done that. And the voting is showing that that is actually the case. The polling is showing that that is the case. That the younger you get on the spectrum, the less likely you are to actually vote liberal or vote conservative. And so we are following this trajectory. And this is going to be more of a long-term observation. Like, this isn't going to happen even within the next couple of elections, I suspect. But part of the reason why we're having such a difficult time picking between liberal and conservative this time around is because the new voters aren't doing that. They're not voting liberal. They're not voting conservative, right? So this back and forth, pass the ball, back and forth game could be coming to an end here in Canada. We just can't seem to coalesce around a party that is not conservative or liberal. Hey, Demand Better, how you doing? Okay, we got enough people in the chat now. Let's do it. We're picking the number. What's today's number? Huh? You guys got to pick a number. Those are the rules. If you're going to be here at the beginning, you gotta throw yourself in. I'm going with a 3. I've been feeling 3 all day. So here we go. Come on, 4. We got a 4 from Misty. Who's the lucky one?
Here we go for today's number.
Big stakes here, guys.
It's September 16, 2021.
Come on, Lonnie. Come on, Demand Better. 7 with
10
Mox with
balls.
7. 10 billion. I'm going to say 10 for you.
Each ball has
So
a
we got
number.
2 7s, a 5, a 3, a 4. That's a good
Numbers
spread.
1 through
Someone's going to
10.
hit it today. Lonnie with a 5.
Swirl the numbers.
You got to pick one, Demand, but you can't. Anyway. Swirl the numbers. Here we go.
Pick a number.
Who's the lucky one? It's not going to be me. It's not a 3. I am yet to win this thing, man.
Today's number is...
Here we go. 6.
6.
Demand Better technically wins, even though you guessed twice, Demand Better. But you know what? We'll give it to you. You get a 6. Lucky day for you, bud. Go buy a lottery ticket. Off you go. Do, 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 do. There is a little part of me that wonders why I keep doing this, but you know what? I love it. I love the random draw. I love the random pick. Hopefully one day I actually win. Oh, man. It's just the story of my life. I just have such bad timing, such bad luck. That next time it'll be 10 billion. You just watch. That's right, Demand Better. That's right. It'll absolutely hit that. So I think that the new news that's really hit the pavement running, fossil fuel firms sue governments across the world for 13 billion euros as climate policies threaten profits. This is one of these things that I've been talking about for years and years, that the way that these trade deals are configured, so things like NATO, right, a lot of the trade deals that get erected by like the Harper administration, right, they have in them these caveats that say that if a government does something to threaten the profit of a corporation, that the corporation has the right to sue the government. So, and this is the reason why like trade deals like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, like these sorts of things, get kiboshed, because the populace starts to put together that like, wait a minute, corporations can sue us if we do things to help ourselves? Like, it's really fucking stupid when you stop and think about it, right? Like, it literally says that we as a trade partnership between the two of us agree that corporations should have more power than the states, right? That is fundamentally what they're saying. And that if you come to your senses as a nation and realize that, hey, climate change is real and is going to cause all kinds of problems, and start to change your policies in order to, avoid oblivion, corporations can sue, right? And now they are. So the majority of cases are being brought under the Energy Charter Treaty and are being hosted with the International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, a branch of the World Bank, right? Like, the capitalist system that we live under is rotted to the core. There isn't a single institution in it that has validity. This includes the World Bank, right? And it's because of this. Fossil fuel companies are suing governments across the world for more than $18 billion after action against climate change has threatened their profits, according to research conducted by campaign group Global Justice Now and provided exclusively to Sky News. 5 energy companies, including British companies Rockhopper and Sept, are using a legal process that allows commercial entities to sue governments under international laws governing trade agreements and treaties. These corporate arbitration courts operate outside of a country's domestic legal system. According to Global Justice Now, which has collated publicly available information, 5 of the largest lawsuits underway are being brought by TC Energy, RWE, Uniper, Rockhopper, and Ascent Resources. The $18 billion they are collectively suing for is almost a quarter of the entire climate funding provided by developed nations for developing ones, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's most recent assessments. Rockhopper is currently suing the Italian government for $325 million in a dispute related to a ban on offshore oil drilling close to the coastline. Are you guys starting to realize, like, when I say that this is a capitalist death cult, it is a death cult. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not trying to connect it to some kind of abstract, like, fantasy thing. I'm not trying to make like a Lord of the Rings connection so that the nerds can be like, oh yeah, haha, like a death cult. They are literally, it is a capitalist system that has arranged itself to be a death cult. That societies that are saying, we've got to stop this fossil fuel extraction, it's literally destroying us, will be sued. You understand? Like, it's a death cult. Assent is asking for $118 million from Slovenia after it passed legislation requiring environmental assessments for fracking. Canada-based TC Energy, the company behind the controversial Keystone XL pipeline, is suing the U.S. government for $15 billion after the Biden administration canceled the project, citing the fight against climate change. Meanwhile, German companies RWE and Uniper are suing the Dutch government for $1.6 billion and $1.06 billion, each following the Dutch government's move to phase out coal and shut down coal-fired plants by 2030. The majority of the cases are being brought under the Energy Charter Treaty and are being hosted with the International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, a branch of the World Bank. The Energy Charter Treaty was created after the end of the Cold War and was designed to provide a stable, transparent legal framework that protected foreign investors as energy markets opened up. So, literally at the end of the Cold War, we basically just said, let fascism reign, right? We essentially just said, oh, we should remove as much power as we can from the state. We should remove as much power as we can from individual democracies, right? We can't have people, pesky people, rising up and saying, hey, we'd like breathable air, clean water, we'd like a livable place to be. We would like a system that is stable and it actually encourages us to have a decent life while we're here. Nope, none of that. You can't have any of that. Everything needs to be sacrificed at the altar of the capitalist death cult, which is explicitly stated here. Global Justice Now trade campaigner Jean Baylock told Sky News, fossil fuel companies should be paying to fix the climate crisis they caused, but instead they want a payout. They're suing governments who take climate action through secretive corporate courts, massively increasing the cost of climate action. And also remember, maybe she'll say it, she added, these courts are built into trade deals and operate outside of and supersede domestic courts and legal systems. That means a country that passes meaningful legislation to phase out fossil fuels could face a multi-billion-dollar fine despite acting entirely legally. It's utterly undemocratic. I mean, I would just withdraw from these treaties. Like, if this was happening to me, if I was the Prime Minister of Canada and this shit was going on, I'd be like, I withdraw. Get fucked. Like, I'm not going to pay to these fucking sociopathic death cultists. So how does this work outside government's usual legal system? They've erected their own court system where their own corporate legislatures will go and have their own conversations, right? It's another legal system that operates through the World Bank, that operates at the behest of all of these nations, but all of those nations are subservient to it, right? This has been going on for like 20 years, guys. Like, this is not news, right? Like, it's just nobody is standing up and actually ringing the bell about it, right? Nobody's actually standing up and being like, hey, there's an unelected institution that gets to make legal decisions on the behest of all of these nations because we all decided to sign this charter at the end of the Cold War because the United States essentially told us to, right? And that if we didn't go along with it, they'd just stop trading with us. So once again, the capitalist death cult gets its way through bullying, right? These cases are only becoming more common as governments commit to climate action. World leaders may finally be waking up to the threat of the climate and ecological crisis, but fossil fuel companies are holding them to ransom, demanding ever greater payouts through corporate courts. We need to nationalize the entire fossil fuel industry and send these guys to the Hague. Straight up. Just send these guys to the Hague. Like, be done with this. Be done with this nonsense. When world leaders gather in Glasgow, they make lofty promises on climate action, but it will all be for naught if fossil fuel companies can sue governments into a state of climate paralysis. It could make a mockery of pledges at COP26, which is the reason they did it. They knew that all of this was going to happen. Like, these guys are psychopaths, right? Global Justice Now campaigners say that the UK is a hub for the international arbitration system and that all but 2 of the top 30 law firms involved in the lucrative industry have offices in London. Prosecutors are planning to gather outside these law and energy firms. Protesters, rather, are planning to gather outside these law and energy firms on Friday. Good, yeah. We need to be surrounding the halls of power at this point. Like, there is literally nothing left to do. Like, there's literally nothing left to do. You can't negotiate with them. They're psychopaths, right? They won't be negotiated with. And anything they say will just be a pander, right? Maybe they'll throw you a bone, right? We need to, like, literally imagine if instead of confronting Voldemort, like, Harry Potter, like, negotiated with Voldemort. And Voldemort got to take over Hogwarts. But Harry Potter and his like crew were they accepted that, like, oh, we'll take over Hogsmeade, right, or whatever that little town was, and we'll be able to like send our kids in, and we'll have like a protection. Like, that's how this sounds to me. Instead of defeating and destroying the evil demon Voldemort, right, we're gonna negotiate with them. No. These guys should go to prison for the rest of their lives, have their assets stripped, and we should use those assets to actually transfer to a clean system. And you know that they're psychopaths, right? Because they're doing this, right? Like, it's becoming obvious. Like, it's becoming obvious. A spokesperson for Rockhopper told Sky News the Energy Charter Treaty is designed to provide a stable platform for energy sector investments. The Italian government issued licenses and encouraged significant investment in oil and gas exploration based on this platform. Clearly, it is not equitable to change the rules halfway through. It is also important to note that those rule changes made by the Italian government were not related to climate change, and that Italy continues to produce significant quantities of oil and gas within 12 miles of the coast, right? The excuse making. Like, oh, we made a deal. You can't just change the deal. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's going to destroy the entire planet. Like, they're psychopaths. They care about money for themselves. A spokesperson for German company RWE said, RWE is not suing the Dutch government for deciding to phase out coal. We expressly support the energy transition in the Netherlands and associated measures to reduce carbon emission. But the Dutch law does not provide for the resulting disruption to the property of affected communities. We do not consider this right. And if you believe that, you're a fucking wank, right? Like, these guys are psychopaths. RWE has therefore filed a request for arbitration against the Netherlands at the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes in Washington under the energy blah, 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 blah. A spokesperson for Ascent Resources told Sky News, Slovenia's Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture, Infrastructure, and Institute for the Republic of Slovenia for Natural Conservation and Forestry Institute, blah, 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 holy shit, all concluded that an environmental impact assessment was not required. The decision, therefore, was not based on the recommendation of Slovenia's own experts, and furthermore, it contradicted the opinions they gave. It is therefore manifestly arbitrary and unreasonable. Chances are good this is just lies, right? Like, again, these guys are psychopaths. A spokesperson for Uniper said, the Dutch government has announced its intention to shut down the last coal-fired power plants by 2030 without compensation. Uniper is convinced that shutting down our power plant in Masklavag after only 15 years of operation would be unlawful without adequate compensation. Just give me money for nothing, right? I'm a capitalist. Give me money for nothing, right? Give me money for nothing. Like, it's just so, like, it's apparent on the face of it that these guys are psychotic, right? Literally, like, this is just, like, literally writing out theft. Like they're just literally writing out theft and then saying, oh, look, we wrote the theft out. Here's the procedure of how we're going to steal from you, but we call it legal because we wrote it on a piece of paper, right? So this is a legal document, even though it has zero legitimacy whatsoever, right? It's just a bunch of corporate assholes who are pretending at law, right? These guys should be arrested. They should have all of their assets stripped, without exception. Without exception, all of their assets stripped. These energy sources should be nationalized, and all of these guys, including their spokespeople, including their workers, should go to the Hague, right? We are talking about like a massive upheaval of a demonic system that needs to be confronted, right? We are talking about needing to actually confront a demonic system, a system of darkness and evil that is so bleak that it will happily destroy itself and even its own children. What we are witnessing is a mass suicide attempt by a capitalist death cult. And if we don't talk about it on those levels, then we're living in a fantasy land. We're living in a deluded, like, oh, maybe they can be negotiated with, right? We are going through the process of grieving the death of this capitalist system. The people who still think capitalism is good are in denial. The people who are taking to the streets in rage and they don't know why they're in the streets, like PPC voters, are angry, right? And there are people who still think we can bargain with these people when they are psychopaths who are happily destroying the planet and their own children. There are leftists who are in a state of total depression, right? Depression is through the roof right now. And then there's guys like me who have accepted all of this and know what needs to be done. We need millions of people in the streets to be surrounding the halls of power, and we can't let them leave until this is gone, right? And when I say this is gone, I literally mean all of these executives have been arrested and are on the way to The Hague to be tried for their crimes against humanity. I mean that legislation is drawn up to nationalize all of those assets and transfer them into the hands of the workers. I don't mean little oh, tax the rich 2%. Yeah, that's a joke. Tax the rich 2%. Nope. These guys need to be out of the conversation completely. It needs to be completely over. It needs to be completely done with. And if you think otherwise, then you're just in a state of denial, right? It's time to push through the grief. It's time to actually do what must be done. We're here. We're here. Now. Please like, share, subscribe. Don't forget to donate down below. All the bullshit capitalism I have to do that I wish I didn't. Ha ha! Jeez, the fucking ways. Why should the Dutch and Slovenian compensate billion-dollar corporations? Yeah, exactly. All the previous oil companies were just shipped overseas to Africa and Asia. Yeah, and there's no compensation for us when they do that, right? Like when they ship all of our jobs somewhere else, like we're just told to go, fuck off. Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But when they do that kind of shit, oh, we got to spend $1 billion. And you just know what it is. Like we're giving $1 billion to a guy who's going to, give money to Jeffrey Epstein to have like a pedophile sex island or something. Capitalism, which has driven so many others to commit suicide, is killing itself. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what it's doing. That's how it's structured to operate. The question we're answering now is how much suffering are we willing to tolerate, right? Like, we should completely detach everything from this capitalist system as fast as possible. As fast as possible. Do you see real change happening without violence? I mean, the protest movements throughout the 60s, the free love movement, the hippies, right? Martin Luther King, all the civil rights movement, all of those were nonviolent protests. And in fact, the evidence is in. Nonviolent protest is actually far more effective than violent protests and attempts at violent coups. That's why the January 6th insurrection was such a failure, right? And it will always be thought of as a failure. Because what needs to be done is surrounding the halls of power, right? They will inflict violence against us. And if we trick ourselves into thinking that violence is the answer, well, the state knows how to talk that way. right? The state understands how to talk a game of violence, right? But nonviolent protest, like if there's 1 million people surrounding the White House, that's a huge problem for the establishment. It's a huge problem, right? Like how can you possibly have any credibility anywhere in the world and have people actually making, like, you want to go make business deals and you want the American government to do business deals while there's 1 million people surrounding the White House? Yeah, I'm not going to invest in America while that's going on, right? I'm not going to spend any money in America while that fucking crazy shit is going on, right? Like, and the fact that it's peaceful means that the state can't do anything about it, right? Will it happen without violence? No, of course there will be violence. The state will shoot people, as it always has, right? Like, the state always opens fire. The state always inflicts violence on its own citizens when it feels threatened. So violence will occur. It will come from the state, right? But eventually there just comes a point, like what I am talking about peaceful protest, it was effective against a psychopath like Nixon, right? Nixon had the White House surrounded, and he was saying things like, well, what if they just come in here? And this is a guy who literally had to get talked down from nuking Cambodia, right? Like, peaceful protest is more effective than violent protest, right? It's the way to get the job done. And if you've got 1 million people outside your front door, you can't just pretend like they're not there, right? You just can't pretend like they're not there. And so I think think about FDR and the New Deal, right? Like, there were massive protest movements going on there that were nonviolent. Like, we know that nonviolence is the way forward. Like, we know that's the truth. And we just need to actually do it, right? But we seem to be caught in like a weird constipation moment. We're just constipated. Like, we don't seem to... We seem like we're in a state of denial. I think that's really what it is. And I need to remind myself over and over again that we are talking about a society in a state of grief. That's the framework that we need to actually look at our society and to understand it at this point. Capitalism has already died. It's never coming back. It's already gone. Right? The system, the game of Monopoly has already ended. The board's already in the box. We're already playing a different game, right? Capitalism's gone. Any semblance of it is literally just a shambling corpse that they're putting in front of us to convince us that capitalism's still working, when it's obviously dead. Like, it's obviously dead. And so we need to push through the denial, right? Stage 1 denial. We need to galvanize the anger, right? Because anger sparking off will do all kinds of fucking stupid shit, right? We need to accept that we cannot bargain with these people. They are psychopaths. We need to accept that people are going to fall into major states of depression, right? That's just real. People are absolutely going to face their depression. Hey, Dan, how you doing? Hey, Ruth, good to see you. That the depression that they're experiencing is real, and we need to be there in solidarity with them. And then we need to push on to acceptance and meaning, right? And what's the acceptance and meaning? Everybody surround the halls of power. That's it. That's it. And we need to stop pretending like we don't know what to do. We know exactly what to do. Make a flyer, set a date, start organizing, right? Once you start doing that and getting yourself on the street, you're going to find all the other people around you who are doing the same thing, and you're eventually going to coalesce together into one thing and punch, right? That's what's going to happen. And how do I know? Like, how can I say that with such confidence? Because that's how it's always worked. And not even overseas, not even in some sort of like other place. That's how it worked during the Civil Rights Movement. That's how it worked during the Free Love Movement. That's how it worked during the New Deal. That's exactly how our society resolves its issues. I think that's stupid. I think that we could probably structure things to be a little bit better and more responsive to the interests of the populace. But that's what we've got right now, right? Yeah, if Marx's Capital was published today, you could name it Coping with the Loss of Capitalism. Silverlight, I'm all on board, but I don't see that happen. Given the chance, I'll just separate myself from the system and develop my own parallel ones to show how much better it can be. Good luck with that, bud. Good luck with that. The parasite doesn't let people go. It's not interested in that, right? That the parasite understands that it can, like, literally the American government has destroyed entire societies several times over simply because they were attempting to erect a new model. And not that long ago, in the 90s, the Clinton administration destroyed Yugoslavia only because Yugoslavia said they wouldn't join the banking system. So they literally blew it up because they said they wanted to create a different model. So good luck. As soon as I'm recovering from my surgery tomorrow, I'm throwing myself into organized protest. It's all we have left. It's literally all we have left. Like there's no other path left to us. That what Kennedy said was completely accurate, right? That if the state refuses to make peaceful protest an option, then violent revolution becomes inevitable. Something along those lines. I'm misquoting him, but right now we don't have the protest movement. Like, it's not quite there, right? I think people want to, but I think COVID has scared the shit out of everybody, right? And it's keeping things down. And so right now our objective needs to be to create the protest space, right? To make it understood within your community that here be protests. Here protests are manifesting right here, right now, at this point, right? And things will build from there. I mean, for God's sakes, like, the anti-maskers have a successful protest movement going on. Like, we can do this. We can absolutely do this, and it's absolutely necessary that it be done. It's absolutely necessary. Like, there is no more crucial work than this. Anything else you're doing other than this, if it's not flowing into getting people into the streets in protest, then, I don't know, it seems like a complete waste to me. Like, the capitalist system is eating itself, it's destroying itself, and it's going to destroy us as well. And, and the people who are in charge don't seem to give a shit even about their own children. So, like the fossil fuel industry is literally suing people for trying to save their lives. Like, unreal. I wanted to do a follow-up on the story that I said yesterday. So we Emily Gallagher, who is a New York State Assemblywoman, put a Twitter thread on her Twitter yesterday, or not yesterday, several days ago. New York Times, thank goodness, the New York Times has picked it up, because this is a story that needs to be blasted. It needs to be it cannot be suppressed. Like, it cannot be suppressed. And I'm going to read this whole thing out because I want people to understand that the endless catastrophe of Rikers Island has been going on for some time. That this is not Emily Gallagher walking into Rikers Island and revealing anything that wasn't already well known. That the capitalist death cult has known that Rikers Island has been a catastrophe for years and years and years, and is choosing actively to do nothing about it. Countless words have been written over the years, many by this board, illustrating the barbarity of the jail complex at Rikers Island and demanding its closure. The latest entry came this week in a tweet thread by New York State Assemblywoman Emily Gallagher, who attended a tour for elected officials and left in shock, calling the facility a humanitarian crisis and a horror house of abuse and neglect. There's garbage everywhere, rotting food with maggots, cockroaches, worms in the shower, human feces and piss, Miss Gallagher wrote. Most of the toilets are broken, so men are given plastic bags to relieve themselves in. I met multiple men with broken hands and legs that were not being treated, she continued. So far in 2021, 10 inmates at Rikers have died, at least 4 by suicide. More than half of the inmates have received mental health services, and as of last year, nearly 1 in 5 have been diagnosed with a serious mental illness. Meanwhile, corrections officers are calling in sick en masse, nearly 1,800 on Wednesday alone, leaving their colleagues to work double and triple shifts and effectively ceding control of parts of the complex to gangs. This is everyday life in New York City's largest jail, despite Mayor Bill de Blasio's vow to close it for good. The plan to replace Rikers, possibly delayed by the COVID pandemic, doubt it, involves an $8.7 billion effort to rebuild 3 outdated detention facilities in Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan to make them more sanitary and secure. A jail is scheduled for construction in the Bronx. Jails in communities have numerous advantages over a centralized facility on a difficult-to-access island. Whatever critics from the left or right may exclaim, New York is not going to go without jail cells, but it can approach incarceration in a more humane way. Mr. de Blasio's first promised in 2017 to close Rikers, the last time he visited the island. More than 4 years later, and with only months remaining in his term, the situation is as dire as it's ever been. In May, a report by Federal Monitor described a pervasive level of disorder and chaos in the city's jail system. Within 3 months, the Monitor filed an update to say that the situation had worsened significantly, with regular violent attacks against both inmates and guards. The city has completely lost control, said Mary Lynn Werwas, a director of the Prisons Right Project in the Legal Aid Society. On Tuesday, Mr. de Blasio announced a plan to address the immediate staffing crisis by shifting more corrections officers from the courts to Rikers and threatening to suspend those who skip work without an excuse. He also called on judges to release as many as 250 people serving less than a year for nonviolent crimes, even though he has the power to release them himself. These are all stopgaps that fail to address the underlying problem. New York, like the rest of the country, locks up far too many people for no good reason. Mr. de Blasio likes to point out that the city's jail population is roughly half the size it was when he took office, but it's still much too big. Close to 6,000 people at this moment. Taxpayers are charged nearly $500,000 per year to incarcerate each of these people, the vast majority of whom haven't even had a trial yet. Others are locked up on technical parole violations like forgetting to check in with their supervisor. This is an absurd expense, especially when some evidence shows that pretrial detention for even a few days makes someone more likely to commit a crime, not less. This number could be significantly lower if Mr. de Blasio and other politicians had not gotten cold feet about New York's bail reform law, which passed in 2019, eliminating cash bail for most misdemeanor and non-violent felony arrests. It was a long overdue fix meant to keep people from being locked up simply for being poor, but the law was rolled back even before it could have an effect, thanks to a relentless scaremongering campaign by the police, prosecutors, and some lawmakers who exploited a few high-profile crimes, a well-worn tactic to block any efforts to make the criminal justice system fairer and more effective. But bail reform's opponents ignore the basic facts. Crime in New York City is still far lower than it was in 1991, when the city's daily jail population was more than triple what it is today. New York needs to give bail reform a chance to succeed. Albany should also revive the Less is More Act, which would prevent people on parole from being sent to jail for technical violations. The legislature passed the law this year. Governor Katie Hochul needs to finish the job her predecessors did not and sign it into law. It's time for Mr. de Blasio to visit Rikers Island again to show the inmates and guards by his presence that he cares about alleviating the atrocious conditions they live and work under. They are part of this city too. And what this article doesn't even talk about is while Emily Gallagher was at this facility, as she was walking through, one of the men got her attention and then attempted to hang himself in front of her with a sheet. This place is a fucking hellhole, and they're not going to take it seriously. Why? Money. Money. There's money in private prisons, right? This article points out over and over again, crime is lower than it ever has been, but the prisoners, the amount of prisoners we have are still going up, right? Like, Oh wow, for profit. What a major success. So I'm happy to see that the New York Times is trying to blow this up, but it's shocking that it is taking this long to get even this most basic of things. Hey, you've got a facility that's turned into a literal hellhole. Are you going to do something about it? We're going to pass legislation. No, we're going to pull it back. Right? Why? Because the United States is a failed state. And that's really what it comes down to. That the system of maximized profits, the system that allows billionaires to exist, the system that makes money the most important thing, is an abject, complete, and total failure to its roots. It cannot be reformed. It cannot be reformed. It has to be replaced. You'd think that this would be the type of thing Canada would be using its political voice to try and shed some light on and have them fix it. If the world made sense. Yeah, the world doesn't make any sense, dude. I mean, one of the things that we're all having to accept and like that we're really, really learning about North American culture is exactly how stupid we are, right? That, like, when I was growing up, there was always this, don't attribute to malice that which can be explained by stupidity. And I just don't think we actually accepted and realized until this pandemic hit exactly how stupid we're talking. Like, we're a very stupid people. Like, very stupid. And easily the stupidest on the planet, right? We're stupider than the Europeans. We're definitely stupider than the Asians by a lot. Like, by significant degrees, right? Significant degrees. Like, I'm not talking like, oh, we're losing by 0.2 or by 1%. Like, we're talking like we have 20% of the society. 20%, right? 1 in 5 people in the society you can successfully just simply say are dirt stupid. And like stupid to the level where they cannot be cured. Like, you can't cure stupid. It's just that they're stupid. And that's 1 in 5 of us, right? 1 in 5 of us are legitimately walking around saying that COVID's not a big deal. That and every single time I see anything, right? There's 20%. Any poll I ever see, there's 20% who are acting like total fucking stupid morons, right? 20% of the society is not getting vaccinated. 20% of the society is still voting conservative. 20% of the society still says that climate change doesn't exist. 20% of the society, right, still thinks that like marijuana is going to give you demons in your blood, right? We are an exceptionally stupid people. Like, if we're exceptional at anything, it is how stupid we are. And it's just like the reason why I'm harping on this, right, is because every so often I'll get into a conversation online or I'll get into a conversation with somebody on the street, and you really do have to just accept sooner rather than later, because you can waste a lot of time. You can waste a lot of time talking to these guys, right? And then you just kind of realize at the end of it, oh, that person is like genuinely stupid. Like, they're literally just saying slogans. They're just literally, but how can you blame us after being misled for so long? So Silverlight, this is a really excellent point, okay? Oh, no, that's okay, buddy. Because we're so stupid, and we're stupid. We're a stupid people, right? That's one thing. But then you also have on the other side of it the fact that we have allowed people to spread disinformation, like people like Rupert Murdoch, people like the Koch brothers, organizations like the CIA, right? We've allowed them to lie to us. Right? They'll even argue in court that it is acceptable to lie, right? And the court system said, yep, that makes sense to me. You can lie all you want. Well, why is that dangerous? It's dangerous because 20% of us are extremely stupid, right? 20% of us will believe literally anything we're told, right? And so if you create a situation where you're spreading disinformation and lying, you're essentially ensuring that the society will always be at war with itself. Because there are people in the society that are too stupid to tell the difference, right? And I'm really, really trying to get to a point in my own life where I can just like accept that, like, this stupidity that we're facing, right, is like, we've got to do better as a people and just accept that, like, everybody who's interacting with the system is not doing it with this, like, let me think of the rational, people always make rational decisions in an economy and all of this, right? No, people are just literally walking around reacting from their gut on most things, right? It's just, the war against misinformation is coming, and whose message will win? Yeah, who's the most funded? Right? Who's the most funded? Which, again, is another reason why we need to get into the streets, because that's where the truth lives, right? That, like, when the climate change protests happened here, it was a moment where the society looked at itself and said, oh, hey, there's like 100,000 people out here, right? Like, this climate change is fake bullshit is not a thing. Like, it's not a thing. Straight up. It's not a thing. And it was the moment, it literally was the pivot moment here in Canada when the corporations, the political class, everybody started to at least say that climate change is an issue that must be faced, that the denialism no longer worked. And it happened 100% because we had a big fucking protest about it and everybody saw, right? The truth lives in the streets. And so the only way we're going to defeat this misinformation campaign is by getting into the streets and working it out with one another. Because if we just keep letting the CIA bombard us with lies from its platforms, we're gonna feel isolated. We're gonna feel disconnected, even though everybody is likely, like, the concept of taxing the wealthy, right? 92% of us agree with this, right? 92%. So if you get out into the streets and you start talking to people, there's a 92% chance that the person you're talking to also thinks that we should tax the wealthy. And that's the way it's got to go. Had someone insist China was going to invade, like, imagine being that stupid. Like, that's a very stupid thing to believe. Like, I think believing the Uyghur genocide line and, like, believing some of the stuff I hear about China is not, like, hysterically irrational. But the idea that China is going to invade, like, how would that even work? How would they even do that? From where? Right? Like, literally pull up a map. From where? What are you even talking about? Yeah, why and how they would ever do that. How they would even get here. But apparently we need a big military to prevent that. Yeah, stupidity is endemic. Yeah, and, like, it's... And it's just fear, right? Like, I get people telling me all the time. Like, well, if you like China so much, why don't you move there? And, like, oh, you're liking China so much, un-American, and, like, just, like, why is it a crime to admire your neighbor, right? Like, if you were living in a house and beside you there was a Chinese family, right, in the house beside you, or maybe down the way, right? Like, let's be more geographically accurate, down the way, and they had, like, a really beautiful house, right? And every time you talk to them, they seemed really lovely, and, like, they've got flowers and, like, a vegetable garden and all this kind of stuff. And you would go over there and you would talk to them, and everything would be at least amicable, if not friendly. And then your neighbor would look at you and be like, why are you talking to them Chinese? What's going on with the Chinese there? Right? Well, if you like them so much, why don't you marry one of them, right? Like, you would think that person is a fucking psycho. You would just be like, what are you talking about? Like, it's a nice family with a nice place. What's not to like? Like, what's not to like? Like, what's not to like about China? Really? Like, give me the brass tacks. Like, really? Like, once you pierce through the veil of all the stupid propaganda that you've been told, shouldn't we admire this place? Shouldn't it be? Does China not have admirable qualities? Right? Like, isn't there beautiful things that exist in China? I think that what's wrong with liking someone else's country? Right? What's wrong with looking at someone else's country and being like, wow, this is great. This is nice. You got some nice stuff going on here. But instead of that, you're going to hyper focus on the strife. You're going to hyper focus on the like the difficulties the country is having with, like, state terrorism or no, not state terrorism, sorry, with, like, Islamic terrorism and all of this. You're going to like hyper focus on that and blow that up to be the defining feature of the entire nation. And it's just like, I don't know, that to me is like saying, that Chinese family, the son and the daughter are in an argument with one another. And they keep fighting with the next door neighbor's kid over who gets what toy or anything like this. And that is like a condemnation of the entire race of China, right? Like, that's what we're talking about. It's so fucking dumb. China is developing mass infrastructure yet wants to invade at the same time. Yeah, it makes sense, exactly. Why would it be working on the Belt and Road Initiative, expanding into other countries, but also declare war on the U.S., risking strategic bombing of vital infrastructure? Exactly. Exactly. China's strategy is growth through building, right? Like, it's to build and to create peace through building. And it's working. Like, that's the success of China, is that unlike the United States, who goes into defenseless nations and steals from them, right? That's how the United States operates. China is going into other nations and saying, hey, how about we help you build some crucial infrastructure? We can get resources from you, and in exchange, we will give you other stuff. And we'll all work out together, right? It's win-win. And those nations, like recently Afghanistan, guys, I cannot express to you enough how obvious, and it's going to be obvious, things are going to be in about 5 years. Right? That Afghanistan is going to explode economically. It's going to explode economically. Right? Once it gets connected to the Belt and Road Initiative, it's going to go, and it's going to happen instantaneously, and it's going to be enormous. It's going to be a radical shift in how Afghanistan operates and how Afghanistan exists in the world. And it's going to be completely because they get connected to this Belt and Road Initiative. And the capitalist simps, these fucking death cultists that are in total denial about it, are gonna, what are they even gonna say about that, right? Oh, communism is evil, it helped those Afghanistans, right? Communism is evil, it negotiated with terrorists. Just wait for that. Wait for that, right? Oh, look, the commies worked with the Taliban, and then the terrorists are getting together. The axis of evil. Wait for it. I don't know. There's too much capital invested in China for any of the saber rattling to be meaningful. That's the truth. The Cold War will be purposeful, always on edge to justify military spending and maintain Chinese investments forever. Exactly. Bumbleguppy, I think you're closer to it than anything, right? Which is that the United States military needs to perpetuate itself somehow simply because it needs to perpetuate itself, because that's where the money is, right? That all of that tax money that's coming in from the federal taxes goes mainly to military expenditure. And so it needs to be justified somehow. Well, how do you justify military expenditure? You create a boogeyman where none exists, right? And every so often you pick a defenseless nation and you deplete all your bombs on it, right? So that you can build more bombs, right? So you can justify this constant cycle of death, right? That the death cult, the capitalist death cult, requires to perpetuate itself. Oh, I know, buddy. I know. Just give me 1 second, guys. I gotta deal with my little puppy. He's looking at me with this, like, Milo. He's got peanut butter over here, but he's too stupid to put it together because he's a little guy. Milo. What's this? What's this, buddy? What's this? What's that? What's that? It's peanut butter, buddy. What's that? What's that? Go to town, buddy, man. Have some peanut butter. I've got this fun little contraption for him that's just got some, like, lids and things that he could shuffle around. And he's being kind of fussy about it. He's such a fussy guy. All right. Why do you think the US and UK stiffed France on the Australian submarine deal? Why hate on France? You know, a big reason why the United States hates on France is because France is an egalitarian nation. That many of the systems that exist in France, because the populace has this attitude of, like, if you try to defund stuff in France, the people take to the streets, right? Like, the culture that exists in France is exactly the culture that I'm talking about in terms of taking to the streets. That literally, like, What was the fun? What was the fun one that happened? They tried to eliminate one holiday, like literally one day of holiday, and people took to the streets, right? They burnt everybody's cars, right? It's a real fuck around and find out situation in France, right? Like if you're a politician and you fuck around, you find out real fast, and the United States doesn't want people to understand that, right? Yeah, like national. So like national level union busting. Not quite 100% sure what you're on that, but like it is like France always gets stiffed. France always gets left out of stuff. France always gets shit on. Remember freedom fries? Remember all this shit? Right? It's because France it doesn't really play ball with the United States, and it doesn't buy into the neoliberal economics, right? Yeah, why is it fine when France guillotines people, but it isn't fine when we do it? Exactly, right? Like we. No, the scariest thing to the establishment, not only the media, not only the disinformation system, not only the powerful, and also the corporations, is the idea of a protest movement, right? That the most dangerous people, like Martin Luther King was one of the most dangerous people in America because when he went to a place, thousands of people went with him, right? That's extremely dangerous to these guys. That's extremely dangerous to these guys. And if you've got a society like France that has a culture of protest movement where there is none of this like, oh, I don't want to be impolite, or oh, I'm scared, or any of that kind of stuff, where literally, like, you do something, and then a bunch of fucking 20-somethings are in the streets in front of the Parliament building smashing cars, right? They don't want the general public to understand that that's how politics actually works. They hope that you fall for AOC wearing a tax the rich dress. They hope that when Nancy Pelosi takes the knee, you go, oh, Nancy Pelosi, well, that's great, and then go back to work, right? That's what they want. They want their performative action to supplicate your actual action. Bit early, Crouching, bit early. You're chomping at the bit a little bit. Yeah, union busting at a national, like, I mean, we just gotta, yeah. Fuck all these guys. That's where I land. Fuck all these guys. Here's a great story, right? Listen to this heartbreaking shit. Hey, I need some advice. Of course, this is coming in from America. My boss came into work sick with a fever, and she told us it was bronchitis, and about 3 days later, I started feeling sick. I was 30 weeks pregnant, felt like a cold at first, and then got worse. When I started to run a fever, I stayed home. I tested for COVID, and it came back positive. Right away, I called my boss to let her know, and she said, I figured you would get it, because that's what I had, but I didn't want to tell anyone and have people freak out, because it's just like the flu, and we all need to get it. She then proceeded to tell me not to tell anyone in the office complex. Well, the first thing I did was call and warn people, her and I exposed. I was very sick for about a week, and I kept calling my doctors for my pregnancy. They advised to just watch my O2 stats and count my daughter's kick. I woke up August 5th, was having contractions, and didn't feel her move that morning. That morning happened to be my oldest daughter's first day of kindergarten. I took her to school, drove straight to the hospital, where they told me there was no heartbeat. I delivered her the next day. Hemoglobin levels were 27 when they should be in the 400s. The doctors didn't know if I would make it through childbirth. When my baby was born, she was sleeping, almost 4 pounds and 5 inches long. The placenta was filled with blood clots. We sent it out for testing, and everything came to the conclusion that I lost her due to COVID. Between COVID and losing my baby, I was out of work for 5 weeks, which I got paid for 0 days. I returned back to work, and my boss was so cold about the whole thing. I had to start a fundraiser to help us, and we're trying to save for a funeral. I never got a sorry. She told me, you need to move on and get back to work. It's all a part of life. You get the virus and people die. My whole family is shattered. My bills are behind. We had to pay to get her cremated and now trying to arrange a funeral. My question is, can she get in trouble for coming to work with COVID and spreading it and lying? That's the American culture. This is the human face of what's going on. This is the reason I wanted to read this, is because we have this idea that this is all an institutional issue. We've got this idea that this is, we're being inflicted by some sort of elitist group from the top. This is a cultural issue. That what we are facing is not just rich cocksuckers who are trying to destroy us. It's also in the populace. That empathy, compassion do not exist culturally. They have been completely distilled from the society. And here's a story. Here's a story about the consequences of that. Yep, that's all kinds of messed up. And yeah, that's what life in the US is like. Like, what do we do about that? What do we do about the fact that people have lost the capacity for empathy and compassion? Like, when I was growing up, I always kind of assumed that, like, the Care Bears and all these, like, stories and things that we were taught, you know, where there was, like, sharing is caring and tee-hee-hee were lame, right? Like, I'm like a normal kid, right? Like, I think that this stuff is kind of lame. Now that I'm older, I come to see how desperately important all of that was. How desperately important it was to even attempt to convince literally anyone that sharing, compassion, and empathy are important virtues for a society to grab a hold of, right? That's the kind of shit that we should be teaching everybody. We should be teaching everybody constantly, all the time. Sharing, compassion, and empathy are the primary virtues. That anything else, focusing on anything else is a waste of time, or likely a ploy to just turn us into a group of slavish morons who are completely willing to do massive harm. Like this woman killed this woman's baby, right? Like, anybody disagree with that? Like, according to the story that we just saw here, like, second-degree murder. Yeah, I think that could be argued. Like, you exposed people knowing you had COVID. You exposed a pregnant woman to COVID. Her baby died because the baby got COVID. We need to eliminate capitalism. The drive for profit only rewards the most heartless, cruel, and selfish people. Absolutely. I mean, that's where we're at, isn't it? That's where we're at. And, like, it's gotten so bad that people are refusing to even acknowledge their own internal self. Right? I keep thinking about that pro-capitalist simp that came in a couple of days ago, right? And asking the question, like, well, what would people do if not pursue money? And it's just like... And then when I posted that video online, I got pushback. I got pushback from a couple of people who were telling me, like, what are you talking about? Like, some internal kind of thing. Oh, that sounds like a bunch of hooba-jooba to me. I'm like, how disconnected from yourself are you? How disconnected from your base emotional self, right? That you don't even acknowledge that there is something going on inside of yourself that needs to be expressed. Like, that's a very dark path. Like, it's a very dark and sinister and sad path that we are on. Oh, this seems to be a good time. I know you're chomping at the bit for it, Crouching. So let's hop to it. Let's hop to it. Let's soothe our souls a little bit. Why not? Let's soothe our souls a little bit and wish and hope for a better future. You guys know this tune. If you haven't heard this tune before, I call this the Care Bear Stare against the capitalist death cult. Antarctica is covered in ice. God asked asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm grown? I looked up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice. Everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point of feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice. And everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes and sweeps me off my feet. I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, so everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice. And everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? When everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice. And everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Antarctica is covered in ice. And everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know that we can do it, because the solution to our problem is easy. That all we have to do is stop fighting. All we have to do is stop fighting the earth itself. That the negative consequences that we will have to face from stopping what we're doing are going to be much easier to deal with than the problems that we create for ourselves by continuing this endless war against the earth. This place was a garden before we got here. It will be a garden when we're gone. And if we want to be here to witness the miracle of the earth healing itself, then all we have to do is stop. Can you guys hear my little puppy over there? He's smacking away on his peanut butter. If you'd like, I can move that away. You're a good boy, buddy, aren't you? You're a good boy, aren't you? I hope you guys are all doing well out there. I love playing that song. There's a peacefulness that comes with that song, you know? It's like just a hopeful spirit comes and settles in. Makes me feel a lot better about myself. I hope it makes you guys feel a lot better about yourselves, or a lot, if not better about yourselves, certainly better about the world in which you live. Because, like, we are kind of gazing into the void here, right? And it is that kind of old Nietzschean phrase, right? Be careful when you stare into the void, because the void will stare back. This is my favorite. I just saw this meme because it's absolutely accurate. The corrupt mainstream media lies to us about everything except the US military, Israel, and communism. It's what I've been saying about the PPC for the last little while, right? Like, these guys are literally saying, like, oh, the media can't be trusted. It's such a corrupt institution. We need to do something about that. But when it comes to communism, they're right on the money, right? They're right on the money. Yeah. Here's kind of an outrageous story, if you ask me. Cabbage bandit faces jail time for planting crops in his front yard. This comes out of South Africa, right? So it's not exactly close to home. But it is a story about a gentleman who saw that there was people who weren't able to get food in his society, and so he turns his front lawn into a garden, right? He tears up all the grass, tears up all the flowers, and starts to plant food. And what happens is some police officers come, and they start to cause him problems, and they start to poke at him, and they start to drive him a little crazy, saying, like, you know, you can't do that, that's against the city bylaws and all this. So he goes down to the city hall to discuss with someone about this, and they tell him there's no such bylaw. There's no such bylaw. Nothing like that exists. And so then he goes to the police department and he says, hey, there's no bylaw, right? I can plant what I like out here. There's no law saying I can't do this. And who was it? It was the chief, the Metro police officer insisted the cabbage is not outside, bylaw or no bylaw. He just does not like it. Period. So it's straight up just police corruption, right? And what is this fellow's response? I'm a law-abiding citizen. If Shrine bylaws outlaw the planting of cabbages and onions outside, I will obey it. If it's written in black and white, I will not say more but kill that cabbage. But I'm not going to destroy my food based on a spiritual bylaw or Commander Nudvla's dislike of cabbage or onions. He is the Metro police boss at the Winter Nest office. I respect that, but that does not make his hatred of cabbage the law. So jail it is for me. Like, what kind of a person, right? Like, what kind of a person in what kind of a society sees someone planting a garden, literally a garden, in their front lawn, and even in countervalence of his own law, seeks to antagonize the person planting the garden? This is yet another assault on us by this capitalist mindset that you can't grow your own food. You need to go shop at a grocery store for that. You need to engage in the capitalist system, right? I always thought lawns were atrocities, yet never made sense at all. I prefer weeds. Most are useful plants or pretty flowers to me. Laws. So dumb. Well, it's even worse because there is no law, right? It's not even about the laws. It's about, oh, look, a police officer abusing his power, right? Oh, wow, another police officer abusing his office? I've never heard of such a thing in my life. What are you talking about? That seems extravagant and strange to me. Like, oy vey. Oy vey. This is from the Hampton Institute. More and more I'm seeing people who are tied into the Hampton Institute come into leftist media. There's a bit of debate going on amongst the leftists about what makes someone a leftist or not. Well, I say straight out, if you see somebody from the Hampton Institute talking, they're about as leftist as it can get, especially in America. No system has come close to the amount of death and destruction caused by capitalism, and no system ever will. It's unprecedented and impossible to duplicate because it quite literally will annihilate an entire planet and everything on it in its pursuit of never-ending growth and profit. Yep. Eternal growth is the ideology of cancer. Begins to make you think. What are we exactly? Like, what are we as a people, as a species, as a creature, right? That, like, other animals that live on this plane of existence, even the carnivores, even the ones that go and kill other animals and eat their flesh, right? They're not attempting to eat every animal in existence. They're not attempting to destroy the place because of it, right? And what do you call a species that actively seeks, and it's willful at this point. Like, it's willful at this point, right? Like, we are beyond the state of plausible deniability. We are willfully doing it. We are knowingly and willingly moving forward to our own death as a species, right? Like, there's no more debate about it. There's no more conversation to be had about it. That we are moving forward towards our own extinction that we are causing, and we are doing it on purpose. What do you even call a species like that? What do you even call an organism that is seeking its own destruction like that? I don't know. Like, I don't know what to call it. Right? It like a parasite doesn't attempt to kill itself. Like, it's literally cancer. Yeah. We are like a cancer cell. Like, we are. We're just literally going, and cancer kills the subject. Norm Macdonald actually had a fun thing that he said about cancer. He was all like, I don't like it when people say that, like, oh, he defeated cancer, right? Because and that's so heroic, because it implies that you can lose against cancer. And that losing is there's something non-victorious about that. And really, when you think about it, well, when you die because of cancer, doesn't that also kill the cancer? You know, that means you don't lose to cancer. That's a draw. It's like the nanobot gray goo consumes all. Mass media is like a cancer plushie. Like, it's and like all of the sentiment. And here's the other part of this, right? Especially in connection to mass media. All of this sentiment that we are articulating here, they're going to sell to us, right? Just like, watch them do it. Watch them do it. Like, I am if you guys haven't noticed, I'm really attempting to popularize the phrase capitalist death cult. I think it's really catching on. I think it's becoming a thing. That hopefully I get known as the capitalist death cult guy. They'll sell us those t-shirts, right? They'll put together some kind of boy band or something like this called Capitalist Death Cult, right? They'll do it. Like, they will sell us a brand called Capitalist Death Cult as they are destroying us with it. They absolutely will do that. Like, that's straight up a prediction, right? Straight up. I'm a prognosticator. They will absolutely sell the destruction they are that they are putting on us back to us. Yep, check out AOC's merchandise page, selling Tax the Rich t-shirts right now. Exactly, right? It's just a way to fund, it's just a way to get more money out of these gullible, like, yeah, tax the rich, yeah, AOC's fighting for us, yeah. I do have an article here about AOC, because she is attempting, come on, do I have it? Oh, please tell me it's like, oh, there it is. So AOC unveils bill to extend unemployment checks that kept millions from poverty. This is actually an important piece of legislation, right? It's likely not going to happen because you do have like psychopaths like Joe Manchin. Like Joe Manchin is but the system itself understands that like this is all performative, right? AOC unveils bill to extend unemployment checks that kept millions from poverty. Yeah. That's her brand, right? That's her brand. Her brand is the tax the rich. I'm fighting for the little guy, right? That's her brand. But they know that that piece of legislation is not going to pass because they know that all they need to do is get one nay from one Democrat. And that Democrat that they've all chosen and agree is Joe Manchin, right? The Joe Manchin is just going to stand up and say no, right? And all of the Democrats understand that that's the case, right? Like, if they didn't want Joe Manchin to do that, there's lots of things that they could do. And if they looked at what Joe Manchin was doing and were like so offended by it and they thought it was so grotesque, there's lots and lots of things that they could do to get rid of this guy, right? Take a look at what they did to Dennis Kucinich. They literally eliminated his seat from existence in order to get him out of the party, right? Like, that's the depths that they're willing to go to get rid of people. That's never going to happen to Joe Manchin. Why? Because Joe Manchin is 100% part of the system. That they understand that Cortez will stand up, and Alexandria Cortez, AOC, she'll stand up and pound the pulpit and say all the stuff and do all the stump speeches and all that kind of stuff. And then their buddy Joe Manchin will shut down the legislation, right? It's WWE wrestling. That's all it is. It's just WWE wrestling. They're all in it together. They're all paid by the same people. They're all part of the same system. And so we got to stop fooling ourselves about this. She's as much a part of it. She's as much a part of the system. It's just that her brand is to be the plucky underdog, right? That's her role. That's her narrative. That's her story, right? Like when Stone Cold Steve Austin goes and fights Shawn Michaels or whoever, right? And they beat the shit out of each other. Well, then they go backstage, they shake each other's hands, and Vince McMahon pays both of them. And like, honestly, from a media standpoint, right? Like those sorts of narratives, that's how you get ratings, right? That my big critique within the structure of this WWE wrestling format is that Joe Manchin's not a very good foil. Like when Joe Manchin goes and talks to the media, he talks very plainly and he speaks very much like this. And he's like, oh, I think that we just need to calm down for a minute and like roll and all that kind of stuff. He needs to be way more bombastic if he's going to play the villain, because that's the role he's in, right? That's the role he's in. He should straight out just be saying, like, fuck the poor. These poor people need to work harder. They're just a bunch of lazy layabouts. I don't give a shit about these guys whatsoever, right? The media would eat that up. People would make t-shirts about Joe Manchin if he was doing that shit. Take a look at what happened with Trump, right? Trump was perfect for the media, right? He was the perfect villain. And Trump knew it. Like, Trump understood what was going on. Like, he understood that he was the villain in this piece, right? He was fine with it. He's completely fine with it. Right, they must control the other side with a strong counterculture, whatever. Well, and just like controlling dissent, right? Controlling dissent. Like there's this CIA idea that like, and you can go find the documents. This isn't like some conspiracy theory or something. Like the CIA understands that when you lose a cultural argument, like when the culture has shifted and you can't get it back, right? Well, you got to get ahead of it and you got to control the dissent so that the populace doesn't land on seize the means of production. It lands on tax the rich, right? Like that's how you do this. That okay, we're losing the cultural thing. People are against capitalism. Okay, so take all of the production away from the sociopaths and have the workers do it. No. Tax the rich. So that when they raise taxes on the rich by 2%, they can declare it a success. And all of the kind of gullible people who are in denial will be like, yeah, 1%. Raise on the taxes by 1%. 1% for the 1%. Yeah, we did it. Right? Like, that's 100% what's going to happen. And they're going to lengthen it out. They're going to lengthen it out as long as possible to even get that, right? It's going to be like another decade before they even do that. Before they even go, yeah, raise taxes on the wealthy by like 2% or 1% or whatever, right? And it's going to be like this enormous battle to even get that. And no one in the United States is actually going to key in and put together. They're like, oh, these guys are all psychopaths. We should get rid of all of them. We should just get rid of all of them. We should surround the halls of power and demand they resign. All of them, right? Like, and I don't mean like Joe Biden resigning. I mean like the guys who run ExxonMobil, right? Like, we should arrest them, incarcerate them, and send them to the heck. And that's not going to happen until you surround the halls of power. Dental care would save us so much money. Yeah, but it's not about saving money anymore. Like, we need to get off that. It's not about saving money. It's about spreading suffering. That's what it's about. It's about ensuring that the populace is in a state of suffering, right? And like, this has been like this forever, right? Alan Greenspan, keep workers desperate. So here's Alan Greenspan. This is a quote. And PolitiFact has like bent over backwards to try to convince you that he didn't say this. But he said, if the workers are more insecure, that's very healthy for the society, because if workers are insecure, they won't ask for wages. They won't go on strike. They won't call for benefits. They'll serve the masters gladly and passively, and that's optimal for corporations. He said this in Congress. He's the former chair of the Federal Reserve. You can go find it. It's on the public record. He said this in the 80s, right? Like, our system is in a, like, the suffering is the point. You're supposed to be insecure. You're supposed to be desperate. That's the point. So they're not gonna, oh, let's make dental care free for everybody. That's not gonna fucking happen. Because that's another chip that the capitalist death cult can use against you. Right? Like, the system is combative, which is why it will ultimately fail. Which is why it's collapsing, which is why it doesn't work. Because it's constantly, like, have we ever heard the phrase, a house divided against itself cannot stand? Right? Do you think we're divided? Like, how divided do you think we are as a people? Pretty fucking divided. We're divided on a lot of issues, and the most important one being that there's an ownership class and there's a working class, right? And it can't stand, right? It can't tolerate itself. It will destroy itself, and it will continue to destroy itself so long as we allow the ownership class to exist. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. About 1/64th, as far as I would guesstimate, best on almost nothing. 1/64th of what, bud? Sorry. The word for the day is KFAB. Yeah, if you say so, bud. If you say so. So, summer travel surge has WestJet and Air Canada asking for volunteer help. So, remember a couple of days ago I showed a thing where people were saying stop asking. There's a meme going on where it's stop asking to be paid for your work. Well, now here's WestJet and Air Canada outright saying that. Hey, you should come work for us for free, right? Yeah, sure we got these big sure we got these big handouts. Sure we got these big bailouts. Sure we got all this money to stay afloat and all this kind of stuff. But that was for the shareholders. We gave all that money to the shareholders. No, we can't actually pay for any of this stuff anymore. So we're asking people to pay to work for free. Like, That's outright what they're saying. That they're saying people should work for free. And there's this really great, this lady here, in my view, really nails it on the head. She really nails on the head what's actually happening in the discourse. Yep.
Hiring practices right now. In the past few months, there is an epidemic of companies lying about their hiring practices right now. In the past few months, there have been so many stories that have talked about labor shortages, about how everybody's short-staffed, everybody's hiring, and that these companies are suffering because people are just too lazy to work. But there have also been just as many stories, usually that don't make as many national headlines, of people going into these places and trying to apply for these jobs and being told no. They're being told that those companies aren't actually hiring. Or, in a much more sinister and convoluted way, they're being asked to jump through wild hoops in order to enter the hiring process. Or they're purposely offering a pay that they know a lot of people will outright refuse because it's nowhere near enough to live off of. Or they're greatly increasing the qualifications needed to even apply for the job in the first place. And then these companies act shocked when they don't have a lot of applicants. And then they go to the media to express how they're suffering because people are lazy, in attempts to turn public opinion back into their favor. Because here's the thing, having a skeleton crew is actually a lot more profitable for the company, but there are customer service drawbacks. So in order to keep a skeleton crew and make more money, but also not have public opinion turn against you, you have to convince the public that it's not your fault, and their current solution is to lie.
Yep. Like, that's it, right? Like, that's it. There's a reason why they're, like, running to the media. There's a reason why they're crying to the media about all this kind of stuff. It's because if they can convince the stupid, gullible people that, oh, woe is me, right? Then people will still support them, even as they actively do everything they can to abuse their own workforce, right? Even as they do everything they can to destroy everything around them. So it's a strategy. Oh, I see how divided we are. So, like, yeah, for every one person who's, like, wealthy, rich sociopath, there's, like, 64 workers. Yeah. No, really, search the word kayfabe. It's the term professional wrestlers use to describe... Okay. Am I pronouncing it right? In professional wrestling, kayfabe, also called work or worked as a noun, is the portrayal of stage events within the industry as real or true. Yeah, this is exactly what I'm describing. Like, it's 100% what they're doing to us. It's, I remember when I was growing up, there was, like, this big narrative around everybody being like, is wrestling real? Like, I go back and I look at, like, the wrestling that we were all looking at, saying, like, oh, that's got to be real, right? Yeah, it's totally real. Like, this is how stupid we are. That we were, like, looking at the actual wrestling, saying to one another, yeah, this has got to be real, right? When, if you look at any wrestling, like WWE, make sure I get a video that, like, doesn't get me shut down. Filter, Creative Commons. It's all just going to be a bunch of assholes talking to each other. But you ever see a guy, like, grab another guy and then throw him and he runs across the ring, bounces off the ropes and comes back and then gets, like, kicked in the face or something? And, like, the whole time I'm like, why run? Like, why run? Like, why do any of that? Yeah, Joe Manchin would be the heel in the wrestling world. That's exactly who he is. That's exactly who he is. He's not a very good heel. Like, he doesn't have a very good presence about him, but he's playing the role. Like, he's playing the role. So, conservative candidate says he would take action against anti-conservative bias among elementary school students, right? Because, like, this is what I was saying before. Teaching kids to share is anti-conservative, right? Teaching people about the racism that exists in the society is anti-conservative. I would emphasize policies that would ensure that people could speak their mind in the classroom, right? Let the fascists have their say, right? Unless you can change their belief, you're not going to get that benefit of being in the main group, the overarching liberal anti-conservative group that really dominates most elementary and high school settings. Yeah, the people who want to teach kids how to share, how to have empathy and compassion for one another, right? vowed to put an end to woke elementary schools. Yeah, yes, the woke culture, Bernier tells the child. Is it in schools? It's in university. It's in journalism, right? No woke culture. Like, fucking yikes, right? Like, just like, oh, you can't teach people how to give a shit about one another. That's not part of the discourse. Oy vey. Oy vey. Here's a great piece of news everybody should know about. 4-day week, an overwhelming success in Iceland. Shorter hours, same pay, same or even improved productivity, smaller carbon footprint. This should be the future of work. Do you think this is going to happen in North America anytime soon, guys? Like, do you think, if you were a betting man, like, how likely do you think it is that we're suddenly going to have a 4-day week in America, right? Like, it genuinely doesn't matter. It genuinely doesn't matter what evidence exists. Like, we don't respond to evidence. We don't care about evidence. Like, work harder, right? That's our culture. Work harder. Just work harder. Work longer. Work for free, right? That's what they're telling us now, right? That's what they're telling us now. Work for free, right? You should expect to work for free, right? That's what we're being told now. So, like, we're going in the exact opposite direction of this. Andrew Smith, here we go again, delivering pizza and watching you. Well, good. I'm glad that you're here, bud. That's nice. That's nice. I've noticed that this week there's been a bit of a decline in viewership, and I think that has to do with people going back to school and shit like that. So, still building, still building. In case anyone needed a masterclass on how to manage an outbreak, exert every effort to prevent loss of life, and ensure nobody is impoverished by the containment measures, China sends 70,000 Communist Party workers to help cities stricken by COVID-19. More than 70,000 Communist Party members in work teams of 2,500 were deployed to Yangzhou to support quarantined residents, state broadcaster CCTV said. Daily necessities worth 300 won, that's $46 US, will also be distributed to 5,000 households in need in the main urban area, Xinhao said. Hospitals in the city are offering online video consultations and medicine delivery services for non-COVID-19 patients to minimize coronavirus infection risks. So they're keeping people home, and they are sending delivery people through the system in order to provide the necessities so that these people can reduce the amount of risk to infection. This is something I've been saying we should have been doing this whole time, right? Like, pay people to stay home, because the capitalist system is a fraud, right? Just get rid of the capitalist system. It's a total fraud. Pay people to stay home, and then hire state people to do delivery services, right? What is it, buddy? My dog is over here whining at me, guys. You wouldn't even believe how cute he is. What is it, buddy? Where's your toy? Where's your toy? Where's your toy? Where's your toy, buddy? Where's your toy? Didn't Xi said he was going to redistribute wealth? Yeah. Hey, Ega, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. That's actually his newest endeavor, is that Xi Jinping is working to check the hoarding of wealth, right? We're over here talking about tax the rich, right? And being like, yeah, we'll tax them by 1%. Meanwhile, like, the Chinese are literally, like, having the wealth of some of these billionaires, right? I think the moment I realized that Xi Jinping was being very serious about this was that one of his own right-hand men, one of the men within his own faction, within the Communist Party, is under investigation now for his connection to Jack Ma, the wealthiest Chinese man, right? So, like, the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, is making serious steps and doing serious things in order to eliminate billionaires in their own society. I mean, I think they could be more aggressive than they are, of course, but as far as I'm concerned, they're the ones who are in the forefront of this. That if you're walking around saying tax the rich, then, well, the Chinese Communist Party is your friend, right? They're actually doing that. Like, they're actually putting taxes on these billionaire corporations because they see, and they've always known, right? This is the other part of it. is that they've always known and understood that billionaires are dangerous. That a single billionaire in your society is the most dangerous thing you can have in your society. There's nothing more dangerous, even if they're altruistic, because a billionaire will, by just the fact of their existence, reconfigure the entire society to whatever stupid whim they have, right? And even if they are not manipulative, even if they are not even if they're altruistic, that's going to happen. And the only way that they could prove to anyone that they were actually a good billionaire is if they gave all their money away and stopped being a billionaire. Like Dolly Parton, right? Dolly Parton keeps getting money, right? Because she's Dolly Parton, right? She's like a treasure. And somebody actually did sit down and be like, okay, Dolly Parton, if she actually kept her wealth, right, she would be a billionaire by now. Hand over fist. But she never gets there. Why? Because she keeps giving her money away. She just keeps giving it away. She gets her money and she gives it away, right? And like, that's the only type of billionaire that I would ever accept in the society. One that refuses to become a billionaire. One that's just literally like, oh, I made $1 billion, I'm going to give it all away, right? Oh, hey, why don't we just do that structurally? Why don't we just structurally say such a thing is not possible? It's simply not possible to have a billionaire. And the Chinese are doing exactly that, right? That Deng, he takes a lot of heat from people who analyze China because he opened up China to capitalist markets. He opened up capitalist markets into China with the statement of let's let them get rich first, right? Let's get wealth into the society. Let's let the rich get rich first. And so that happened. And now, so they're rich and they got rich first. Well, so now what's the next part? To take that wealth and distribute it back out into the society. There's a video on YouTube worth watching called Does Socialism Work? Soviet Citizens Speak About Their Lives in the USSR. Most of the people he interviewed said it was better. Yeah, we know from the polling, right? We've got the polling data now. And it's any poll you can find. Any poll you can find, majority of citizens say that communism was better. Okay, guys, I got to help my dog. He's
Alberta
losing his little
leads the
mind, so
country
I'm going to put this on.
in cases with more than 1,600 today. Nationwide, 4,200 people tested positive and 42 people died. The number of Canadians fully vaccinated still hovers around 78%, but it's those unvaccinated ending up in the country's intensive care units. CTV's medical specialist Davis Favreau on the emergency strain.
The team running this intensive care unit at Hamilton General wants Canadians to see the reality about the fourth wave.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then there's an eighth person there. It's a bit crazy that people don't believe it. This is real.
1/3 of the people here are COVID patients fighting for their lives, each one unvaccinated because they felt it was not important.
Some of the viewers that have those beliefs will be able to watch this on TV, and there's nothing unreal about these people, and they're getting sick.
So these are 2 COVID patients on life support.
On advanced life support, both are unvaccinated.
Doctors across Canada report the unvaccinated who get sick are younger and otherwise healthy patients.
That machine over there with the screen,
Yeah.
so that's the ECMO machine.
Many are in their 30s or 40s like this man. Some need ECMO, equipment that puts oxygen into their blood because their lungs have failed.
There's a catheter the size of a garden hose in his neck, and there's a catheter the size of a garden hose in his groin. It takes the carbon dioxide out, puts the oxygen in, and then pumps it back into his heart.
And each requires a medical team 24/7, largely avoidable with vaccination, say doctors.
It's frustration with the individual choice that the patient made. It's anger with people posting on social media that COVID's not real or that vaccines don't work. That basically preys on vulnerable people who are trustworthy and forces them to make bad decisions that in some cases are lethal.
Some patients do express regret.
And a lot of people have been asking for vaccines right before they get intubated, but it's too late.
And the ongoing protests by anti-vaxxers and those who harass workers are disheartening.
They still think it's a hoax. And that honestly is a slap in the face to us after everything that we've been doing.
Yeah, a lot of this is sort of emotional, moral fatigue.
Frontline teams admit it's eroding compassion.
What's changing now is the empathy factor. When you know that many of these situations are very easily preventable.
Everyone here, I mean, all of these docs and nurses and RTs, all of them have been working harder than they ever have, and they're all tired. Yeah, so, I mean, there's not a lot of reserve left in the tank.
This unit, like many hospitals across the country, has also seen an exodus of staff.
They're always constantly calling for overtime, but we are burnt out. It's hard to come in on your days off.
And some say the health system is cracking under the stress with this plea to vaccine skeptics.
Our goal would be to increase vaccination, because vaccination is what's going to get us out of this. And so I don't actually care if people believe it's real or not, as long as they get a vaccine.
And just to underline, the medical team at the hospital confirmed they have yet to see a fully vaccinated patient end up in their ICU with COVID. Lisa?
So hard to see what's happening in the ICU. All right, Avis.
Yeah, Branwyn, like your story too. Now, if they're anything like my dad, they will see the 8 people on life support and say, oh, 8, that's nothing. Or my mom will say there's a 99% recovery rate. It's so sad to see my parents disappear. Yeah. Like, just the empathetic detachment, right? The detachment from base compassion. Like, that's real basic stuff. Like, that's real basic stuff. If you don't have that, like if you're an adult walking around and you're just completely detached from the ability to have empathy or compassion on that kind of a level, in that like kind of Archie Bunker style, I think that's it for you, man. Like, that's it. Like, I don't think you can come back from that. Like, it's just been distilled out of you. Dan, my partner works in hospitals, not in the ER, but for deliveries. There have been mothers, weaker immune systems, deliver unconscious and pass away a few days with other kids at home. Yeah. And lots of nurses and doctors are mass quitting too. Yeah. Like, it's a disaster. It's a disaster. And the disaster is made worse because of who is in charge at the moment, right? The Ford administration has been nothing but a disaster for these people. It's been a constant fight. I mean, for goodness sake, some of the people that the Ford administration is putting in positions of prominence and positions of power are literally like anti-lockdown, anti this kind of stuff. People who just are really just interested to get people back to work. That's what they care about. It's absolutely despicable what the Ford administration has done during this period of time. And then on top of that, you have like a movement coming out from the people themselves denying the existence of the virus that these people are fighting. Like, I am generally of the opinion that lots and lots of doctors and nurses are going to leave the profession, and many of them are going to get involved in the political system. And when they do, we should let them take power, right? I feel like we as a people owe it to them, that we should let them take power. Because, like, clearly giving power to the psychopath class isn't working, right? Like, that's obviously failed us. So, like, we need to move forward with people who have actually faced reality, right? I think my favorite part of this clip is that there's this fellow who says people, oh, there's lots of stuff going around on social media, and you know, and people believe it, trustworthy people. And I like that he's using the word trustworthy instead of gullible. Because, like, that's what it is. Like, you're gullible if you're believing that shit. I had to go with my mom to the hospital the other day. She refused to wear her mask. Well, a little girl was admitted with an illness, probably COVID. It was so embarrassing. Yeah, it's so funny that these conservative types are the ones that are calling us snowflakes, right? Like, no one is more a snowflake than these conservatives. Like, this pandemic has revealed it finally, down to the ground, right? These far-right people, these people that live on the political far-right, there's nobody who's more fragile than these guys, right? Like, their whole shtick is, like, they can't just put a piece of cloth over their face. Hey, Victini, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. I hope you're coming out on Saturday, bud. I hope to see you there. Just for the crowd, there's a Saturday protest, 2 p.m., Dundas Square. If you can make it, that'd be great. If you can't, I understand. I don't want to wear a mask and get a needle stabbed in my arm, but you're a snowflake. Yeah, exactly. Like, nobody is more precious. Nobody is more mollycoddled. Like, nobody. Like, these rural farmer types that are telling everybody to get a job and I worked hard and all this kind of stuff, those guys have had their balls coddled their whole life. Like, literally, I got a bunch of free land from my dad that was given to him by the government. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, it's not even embarrassing anymore. Like, it's just like, it's beyond childish. And like, why are we constantly tolerating it? Why are we constantly putting up with it? As even the earth itself attempts to destroy these systems, right? And like, that's exactly what's happening. Like, I understand that this does get into a bit of hoobu-jubu, like the earth is alive and all this kind of stuff, but like, look at it. Who's getting wiped out because of this? Who's getting fucked up because of this? Oh, it's all the people walking around pretending like it's not happening. Oh, okay. Like, seems like the defense mechanism's working just fine. Yeah, some are sick and most are asymptomatic, but so far the majority are not vaccinated because Facebook. Exactly. Yeah, and like, at what point, like, Facebook, the people who run Facebook should take some responsibility for this, in my view. Like, sorry, man. Like, you don't get to just, like, have organizations disseminating misinformation without it being countervailed, without it being checked, without there being some kind of check to it. Because, like, that's what's happened, right? That the big learn, and I said it earlier, so I won't harp on it too long, but, like, the big learn for us in this pandemic is that we're realizing how stupid we are, right? That our society is very selfish and petty and stupid. And we're really coming to terms with the reality of what that means. And if you've got selfish, petty, stupid people in your society, and you start to spread disinformation into it, well, it causes chaos, right? And I am like, they mentioned it in the piece there where they were saying like, you know, the empathy and compassion is going down amongst the doctors. Yeah, I'm over it. Like, I'm over the compassion. I'm over the empathy for these guys. Like, here I am walking around saying that we need to preach compassion and empathy and all that kind of stuff, and that we need to have that in our society. But their wounds are self-inflicted. Their wounds are completely self-inflicted. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, go die of COVID. Like, there are vaccines. There are medical professionals telling you that we are dealing with this issue and that you need to deal with it. And if you're not going to, just fucking die. Like, hurry up. Because we know that you are the people who are also voting against us on climate change issues. We know that you are the guys that are voting against us on moving forward on progressive social issues. Like, we know. And now you're sitting here genuinely killing yourself. Like, that's really what's happening. That there is a virus going around that people can catch, right? We have a vaccine to protect you from it and a mask you can put on your face and you won't do it. When you get COVID and die from it, I don't care. I don't care. You're not a victim. You're not a victim. You're a pedantic child who literally refuses to just take your medicine and even contemplate for a second that your actions might hurt somebody else. And even if you do contemplate it, you just don't care. Your death is not a loss. Your death is not a loss. We are better off without you. Hauling you around has been a real hardship for us, so getting rid of you is going to be a real benefit. Yeah, if you take medical advice from Facebook, yeah. Man, I would just nationalize Facebook, shut the crap down for good. I don't even care. I actually wish that we would do like I think that we could create like a nationalized board where it was like an aggregate, you know? Like, I feel like there's too many of these things. And all it's doing is it's splintering the society and letting us create intellectual ghettos, right? Where we're not actually talking to one another, right? There's a lot of preaching to the choir, and it's very difficult to have any kind of permeation between that. So this intellectual ghettoization creates like echo chambers where people can just talk and they never have their views challenged. They never pursue anything. And because it's an echo chamber, if you go into it and you attempt to produce separate views, well, you're just banned, aren't you? You're just split off from it. So we are becoming like digital tribesmen, right? Like we are reverting into our tribal selves again, and these digital forays are just making that occur. And it's very difficult to actually have meaningful discussions about important issues anymore. Like the media is definitely not doing that. Like the mainstream media is definitely not having those conversations. You can't really have those conversations on like Reddit or Facebook or any of that kind of stuff. And even something like this, like YouTube, what I'm doing right now, right? Like, do you genuinely believe there's going to be meaningful discussions? Like, do you genuinely think the people who are coming into the chat here are like being genuine about wanting to grow or change or any of that kind of stuff? If I was a hospital worker, I'd be walking away from these people too. Yeah. Like, I mean, why they're taking up beds, they're taking up space, they're taking up resources, right? And why? Because they're too selfish and stupid to realize that they need to take the jab. Like, we should have mandated this. Like, it's so authoritarian. Oh my God, yeah, we've mandated this shit in the past, right? Mandate it. Say get it. Oh, well, there's a crime and all my rights and all that. And they'll cry and they'll squall and they'll act like a bunch of babies while they get their fucking needle, right? Just like the little tiny babies that they are, right? And then they'll be fine and everything will be fine, right? And they'll go off and complain about how they live in a fascist society because they had to get a fucking needle or something. Like, too fucking bad. Like, I don't know what to tell you anymore. Like, too fucking bad. Me too, I did my part. It's not part of my problem anymore. How about this? Facebook is now a public service under the post office. Yeah. Like, that's the kind of thing I want to see. I want to see these social media sites. Like, I genuinely think that we need to, like, create an aggregate site for, like, Facebook and Reddit and all these kind of places to be, right? And they're all on the same feed. And I think that there should be some channels that should that you have to be part of, right? Like, I don't think it's healthy for the nation to splinter itself the way that we have, right? Like, I literally cannot exist. Well, and part of also what happens, because things are privatized, is that literal fascists can take over, right? Like what happened to Our Canada. Big reason why you've got like Our Canada and you've got you've got Canada Left, and then you've got Meta Canada, and then you've got like Canada Liberal, and like New York, True North, Strong and Free, right? Like you've got all of this splintering happening is because fascists took over Our Canada. And if you try to put forward any, like literally any progressive agenda, they ban it. They don't ban you. They just get rid of it. They just take it off, right? Because if you're a fascist, you want fascism to win, right? And that's why privatizing this stuff doesn't work. That's why keeping all this in the hands of private individuals doesn't work, because literal fascists take over. Like, and it's very black and white. And so there needs to be some sort of state-sponsored control where, like, the moderators are operating on like an actual mandate that you can actually read and adhere to. I swear there are so many crazy ideas about the horrible crisis is accept capitalism. Well, like, for example, the housing market. Like, the housing market. Where are we landing on that? What's the problem? Every single time a housing thing comes up, it's always there's too many immigrants, right? That's number one, right? Housing comes up and the first thing that people say is, there's too much immigration. There's too many immigrants. So here we are, right? We're scapegoating the immigrants again, right? Oh, that's always worked. That's never been a total fucking disaster for societies that have done that. Yeah, make the internet a public utility at the same time. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you guys know me. Like, we should nationalize most things. Like, the idea that we should have private owners running any of this, like, what are you talking about? Like, all that's going to do is increase prices and reduce service, right? And that's what's happened every single time, is that they've reduced service and increased prices. Why? Because at the very least, they need to be paid for, and they're worthless, right? They do no work. They provide no value. They're just a shareholder, right? So at the very least, you need to somehow find a way to pay for this worthless person who wants like millions of dollars, right? Like, it's not like they're there and they're like, give me $10,000, right? And so you gotta up it all kind of stuff. No, they want millions of dollars for doing literally nothing. And to justify that, you need to either raise prices or reduce service. That's like a true, I don't understand how that's not completely understood. How that's not just commonly understood across the society. That if you privatize something, you're going to either raise the prices or reduce the service. And that's literally how it has to work. Like, mathematically, it must work that way. And any service that's ever been privatized will show you this. Like, these guys that are walking around asking for, well, show me evidence that communism works. Their entire system shows them that it fails. Literally every single time. So they're not interested in evidence. They're literally not interested in evidence. And there are actually like well-known, like here's, and this is actually really worth bringing up because Karl Rove, How to Debate Liberals. Karl Rove, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, here you go. So a piece commonly known as Tactics for Effective Conservative Blogging, from circulating online as early as 2011, has been attributed to Karl Rove. Now, to be fair, there is no actual evidence that Karl Rove was responsible for this, but just the fact that it was attributed to Karl Rove tells you about the sinister nature of this. I have seen this in action. It is obvious that corporate-owned bloggers use these tactics, okay? These are important to understand because most of the tactics involve wasting your time, right? That they know you're not being paid. They know that you're not being paid. They are being paid, okay? So they can afford to waste your time. It's their job to waste your time. That's why billionaires are dangerous. But tactics for effective conservative blogging. Engage. Demand an elaborate, time-consuming comparison analysis between your position and theirs. And if you provide a website or something where it's already happened, they'll demand a synopsis of that, right? Because it's about wasting your time. It's not about figuring anything out. Entangle. Insist that the liberal put their posts in their own words. Exactly what I was just talking about. That will consume most time and effort for the liberal poster. They will be unable to spread numerous points on numerous blogs if you have them occupied. Allowing a liberal to post a web link is too quick and efficient for them. Tie them up. We're going for delay of game here, right? This is absolutely what they're up to. Dismiss their narrative as rubbish immediately. Do not even read it. Well, because they don't read, they're illiterate. Once the liberal goes to the trouble of research, gather, collate, compose, and write their narrative, your job is to discredit it. Make it obvious you toss their labor-intensive narrative aside like garbage. This will have the effect of demoralizing the liberal poster or make them unwilling to expend the effort again. And for us, that's a net win. Attack the source. Any liberal website of information must be marginalized, trivialized, and discounted. You guys have seen this. I guarantee you've seen this. Where you put something up from like Press Progress or something and they just say, lame source. Because the only source they're willing to accept is like Fox News, right? Let the blogosphere know that Truth Out, Think Progress, right, they're stating it outright. The Nation and Move On are liberal rubbish propaganda. Discredit liberal sources on information whenever possible. So they literally can't talk about the subject. Confuse, challenge the liberal position with questions, always questions. The questions need not be relevant. The goal is to knock the liberal poster off their game and seize control of the narrative. Once you have control, you can direct the narrative where you want it to go, which is always away from letting the liberal make their point. Conversely, do not respond to their leading questions. Don't rise to their bait. Contain. Your job is to prevent the presentation and spread of liberal viewpoints. Do anything you must do to prevent a liberal poster from presenting a well-reasoned argument or starting a civil discussion. Don't allow a liberal to present their dogma unchallenged ever. This is the reason why I stopped posting in Art Canada. because it's obviously been taken over by fascists who are following this playbook, right? That they can't actually have a discussion with you, so they need to obfuscate and smokescreen, right? And this is the playbook. That's what they do. And a big reason why I think that lots of this stuff needs to be a public utility, because it's one thing if there are posters, right, in the atmosphere doing that kind of stuff. It's quite a different thing if the mod team is doing it. It's quite a different situation. If it was public, all the crazy loudmouths could get a public hearing in person to make their case, and you can't have that with the privately owned. They'd still be banned, but it would be public. Moderators all belong to public workers' unions. Yeah, well, why not? How cartoonishly evil. Give us a link to the car. Here, I'll give you a link to this. Tactics for conservative blogging. Yeah, you'll find it if you just do a search of it, I'm sure. And it's it's very revealing, right? It's very revealing because at no point are they actually talking about how to present their own case, right? How to actually defeat somebody with actual arguments or points. That's not what it's about. It's not what it's about. And like Ben Shapiro book, what was it called? Own the Libs. Yeah, how to debate the leftists and destroy them, owning the libs, right? So this connects directly to this. It's direct. It's a direct connection, right? Triggering the libs, melting snowflakes. Owning the libs involves performing and transgressing the logical conclusions of the left ideological obsession du jour, such as donning politically incorrect attire or depicting a childish character of safe spaces. In all its forms, owning the libs reveals the absurdity of leftist dogma through a tool too long neglected by conservatives, comedy. And what's great about the conservatives is that they don't realize that they're the joke. Like, they legitimately think they're walking away winning. But there's like so this is how stupid we've gotten, right? It's so stupid. Yeah, it's how JB Peterson operates. Yeah, for sure. Facts don't care about your feelings. All of that, right? Like and if you start to lose the debate on points, which is easy to do for conservatives because they don't have points, like they're insane. Then you just move on, right? You just literally move on. Right? So and they're aware, right? Like think about this a little bit, okay? Like they are not saying you are correct, right? You have good arguments. Put forward your arguments. Have a good faith argument, right? That the strength of your arguments is what will carry the day. They are literally forming a method to have bad faith arguments on purpose, right? That they literally cannot argue in good faith because they understand that their position lacks credibility. They understand it. Like they do. They understand that they have no credibility. They're just rich, right? Yeah, ad hominem. Their crappy jokes become the object ridicule, though. The whole one joke meme. Well, and like, think about like even like the whole snowflake thing, right? Trying to call liberals snowflakes. It's just like, dude, no one's a bigger snowflake than conservatives. There's no one who's a bigger snowflake than people like Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro. These guys are the biggest, most precious, most mollycoddled snowflakes that have ever existed in our discourse. No one is a bigger snowflake than these guys. Like, for God's sakes, like Shapiro is walking around saying that he has a magic book that he follows to give him life's answers. Like, you're a fucking little snowflake. Like, that's a little snowflake. And then he just sits there and he fumes about it and gets all furrow-browed and angry about it like a little chipmunk. And we're all supposed to take him seriously? Why? Like, why? He's such a loser dork. Like, he's such a loser. Just like, he's just like a little weird fascist who, if he ever had power, would completely destroy everything. Right? And he's explicit about that. Like, this guy's solutions literally are the first, like he said this, the first thing that you need to do when you're in a crisis situation is flood the area with cops. Oh, so it's a war. So it's a war you want. Oh, okay. Okay. But that is what he wants, right? The whole Ben Shapiro WAP Twitter event was hilarious. I'm not familiar. Ben Shapiro got mad because of a minor change in the definition of the pronoun they on an encyclopedia. Well, yeah, and like it's such loser like it's enormously like it's enormous loser behavior, right? Like he's not cool at all. Like there's no chill in this guy at all. That like you want an ad hominem attack on Ben Shapiro? It's that he's a fucking dork. It's that he's a loser, right? Like he's such a fucking loser. Like if you were in high school with this guy, you would understand that he's the fucking loser. That the only reason he has like the position that he has is because his parents were rich. Like that's it. Like he himself is evidence that the whole meritocracy model fails, right? Like this is the big thing that these conservatives don't get, that they themselves disprove their own theses, right? That like, oh, I got up here because I'm the best at what I do, and they're the meritocracy. It's literally like your parents were fucking filthy rich. And in the case of people like Jordan Peterson, his family are ranchers. They were given free land by the government, right? The Canada Dominion Act allowed British men to move out to the prairies and get 360 acres of free land given to them, and they would work it. And of course they became rich. They have 360 acres of free land. If you can't get rich on 360 acres of free land, then you've got large scale problems going on in your mental space, right? Anyone could figure out how to make money. From like literally you could make money on 360 acres of free land just by clear cutting it. You would be a millionaire just by clear cutting it. Like literally chop trees down, sell trees. Like that's how easy it would be to make millions of dollars. And so these guys become ranchers, right? They have a kid, Jordan Peterson, right? They send him off to university when university is cheap, right? And he becomes a sociologist, writes a book, all this kind of stuff. Like it's a great success, sure, but don't fucking pretend like it's because of some stupid meritocracy bullshit. Your family is fucking filthy rich. And they're filthy rich because the government gave them free land. So that you can turn around and tell everybody, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, it's embarrassing is what it is. Like, it's embarrassing. If you don't have the humility or the vision or the forthrightness to understand your own family's history and understand how what's coming out of your mouth is hysterically in contradiction to what has happened in your own family history, then we don't need to listen to a word that you have to say. Like, pay attention to your own family history. And if you can't do that, then you're just kind of embarrassing yourself. And it's the same with Shapiro. Like, his family are just rich. Like, what do you think is going on here, dude? I work hard and I did all this. It's like, it's such fucking bullshit. It's obvious on the face of it. Like, it's obvious. Like, you just need to look at their family history for 10 minutes. It doesn't take any time at all. And you figure out, like, hey, do you think maybe the fact that your family got free land given to them by the government has something to do with this? No? Oh, it's just you, right? Oh, it's all a meritocracy? Oh, okay. And, like, how, like, self-aggrandizing is the idea of a meritocracy, right? Oh, yeah, of course the people who are at the top of the society are saying that they're there because they're the best, right? Sounds like something a sociopath would say, doesn't it? That, like, I'm here because I'm the best. I'm the hardest worker. I'm the smartest. Yeah, sounds exactly what a sociopath would say when he was at the top of the society, right? And they've, like, constructed a whole ideology of meritocracy built on this idea that they're the best and that's the reason why they're here, right? And then you dig into their family history and you find out that, like, oh yeah, my family's wealth came from, like, slavery. Like someone like the Bush family, right? This is completely case in point, right? Oh, the Bush family, they're at the top because of a meritocracy, all this kind of stuff. Literally, George Bush's grandfather was a fascist Nazi sympathizer who owned slaves. Like, where do you think their wealth came from, guys? Like, where do you think their wealth came from? And, like, we're just letting them walk around saying this shit unchallenged. because we don't have the wherewithal to look at their family history for 30 seconds. Like, these guys discredit themselves. It's easy, right? It's easy. Like, it's so simple to see how they discredit themselves. Like, for fuck's sake, Ben Shapiro believes in a magic book. Like, that's it, right? Like, that's the end of his credibility as a thinker and a speaker. We don't need to actually engage him on any of these points. He thinks that there's a book that has magic powers. Like, if you're that stupid, you don't need to be tolerated, right? Like, that's very stupid. The thing is, though, is that he speaks really fast and people like it. All you got to do is speak really fast and say a lot of things. And, hey, there, buddy, how you doing today? Yeah, on the libs, yeah. Famous. Ugh. So, moving on. Oh, yeah, 864 cases. I should start taking bets. When do we think we're going to break 1,000? When do we think we're going to break 1,000? You want to come up, buddy? Do you want to come up? No? Okay. I keep trying to get my dog on my lap so that he can say hi to you guys, but he's very opposed to it for some reason. What do you think? What do you guys think? When do you think we're going to break 1,000? It keeps flirting up and then going back down to about 600, 500. I think we're going to break 1,000 next week, though. Hopefully 1,000 is finally the point where people start to actually... You think start of next week? Like Monday? I was thinking more like Wednesday. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And of course it's going to be driven by the fact that we're just sending kids back to school. Like, how dumb is that shit? Sending kids back to school in the middle of a pandemic? Like, literally we did exactly this last time. Like, we did the same thing last year and the same fucking thing happened. Like, how fucking stupid are we? Pretty fucking stupid. The ends justify the means? What's the ends? The ends is just making some billionaires rich, right? Like, doesn't matter how many kids die, right? PSA, intentional incompetence makes it easier to discredit public programs and build support for privatization. Capitalism 101. That comes from Masses United. Forever wondering if I'm truly far left, or if I'm just an empathetic person living in a late capitalist hellscape where I get called a commie for saying, hey, maybe poor people don't deserve to starve. My position on this is, of course, if you're getting called a commie, if people are calling you a commie for saying things like, hey, maybe poor people don't deserve to starve, just start calling yourself a commie. They're going to call you a commie anyway, right? Just start doing it, right? And then they'll go into, like, the dumb bullshit, and you can just say, that's dumb bullshit. Like, we really are at a point now where you can literally, like, the people who start saying that kind of shit, I literally look at them now and I just go, that sounds like some Reefer Madness stupid shit. Why are you listening to that? Like, it's just Reefer Madness nonsense. There's no credibility left anymore. And, like, I'm literally looking forward to the day where I get to say to some of these PPC guys who come at me with this, like, commie stuff, I'll be like, oh, so you believe the mainstream media. Like, that's what I'll start saying to them. That's exactly what we should say to them. Oh, so you believe the mainstream media when it comes to communism. And they'll be like, no, the mainstream media says, well, why are you listening to them then? No, it's a communism. Well, where have you gotten your information from? The mainstream media, right? Like, have you read a book on the subject? Have you read even a Wikipedia article on the subject? Like, this is the embarrassing thing about the communist conversation now, guys, is that, like, go literally take a look at just the Wikipedia articles, right? Let's accept that, like, the CIA has control of Wikipedia and all this kind of stuff. Well, they haven't done a very good job of making it like an anti-communist thing. Go read Joseph Stalin's thing, and you're just like, oh, this is like a normal, like, it's not normal, obviously. He's like quite an exceptional person, in fact, but, like, he's not like a demon. Yeah, the whole problem is people think we have time. Yeah. That's why this channel is going to exist and why I think it's going to ultimately take off, is that I make the time. And then people gather here, and then they ask me, the guy that's actually like taken the time to actually go through it. And I'm like, look, like Joseph Stalin's Wikipedia page is actually the story of like a Robin Hood figure who becomes a revolutionary and manages to take over the society, right? Like that communism is a failure. What are you even talking about? Literally read the Wikipedia article of the Soviet Union, and they'll tell you the successes of the Soviet Union. There's actually a really interesting thing that's happening in the intelligentsia of the military, which is that I think that the intelligentsia of the military are starting to realize that they cannot just keep chest thumping their way to victory, right? That like they are looking at what's happening in America and being like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I think that they straight up are starting to put together that like if we keep moving forward in this way, we're going to be fighting ourselves. Right? And like, if you're the military, that's a problem. You don't necessarily want to fight yourself, right? It's all very complex. It's all very complex. Good time to say, guys, if you're in here, please like, share, subscribe, hit all the bells, hit all the whistles, throw a buck my way, why not, right? I got my Patreon down below, all that kind of stuff. I got to pay rent just like the rest of us. Capitalism, capitalism, capitalism. It doesn't work. In 2016, I was an independent Bernie fan. 21, I'm a communist. Get on my level. Chop, chop. Yeah, but the Soviet Union collapsed. So did Republican Spain and revolutionary France and the numerous Portuguese republics. That doesn't mean that democracy was a failure. My absolute favorite is that I literally had someone, an American, come to me and say, like, the October Revolution was a disaster. It was a violent coup. And I'm like literally looked at him and said, the War of Independence, like just the American War of Independence. Like, remember the Tea Party, like all that, right? Like for every single event, and like they'll throw like, oh, communists, they had a famine, and I'm like, the Dust Bowl. Do you guys know about the Dust Bowl? You ever heard about the Dust Bowl? Like the American Dust Bowl, right? The Dust Bowl was a period of dust storms, greatly damaged the ecology and agriculture of American and Canadian prairies during the 1930s. Severe drought and failure to apply dry land farming methods to prevent the aeolian processes caused the phenomenon, right? And my favorite thing then, you bring up the Dust Bowl, right? Because it was a fucking disaster. And people go like, oh, well, that was a natural disaster. You can't. It says, yeah. You know what the difference between me and you is that I don't attribute famines to communism. You seem to do that. Was there a big communist movement that was going on around this period of time? Can we blame the Dust Bowl on the communists? Right? Like it's this desire to attribute natural disasters to communists. It's like, what do you think? Do you think we've got like fucking superpowers, dude? Do you think that we can like literally go out and be like, and there shall be a famine in the land, right? And then my absolute favorite is that they'll take documents that the communists themselves wrote, where the communists said, there were many reasons for why the famine occurred, and here are some of them. We feel that we could have done better here, and we feel like we probably contributed in this way. So like literally the communists were going, yeah, we should find out how we could have done better. How we could have done better in this situation, and did we do something that unwittingly caused this? We should discuss it. And the capitalist crowd will take this and treat it as if it's like a confession, as if it's them being like, yes, we intentionally destroyed Ukraine with like, when literally they're going like, we want to improve as a society, and how you improve as a society is you self-analyze. But if you don't actually have like a centralized government, if you don't actually have like centralized bodies that are interested in doing this, then you never do it, and ultimately you destroy yourself. For sure 1 + 1 isn't 7. Are you sure? Are you sure, Ega? 1 + 1 isn't 7? Right? And like, America has had periods of famine. The Dust Bowl is a big one, right? The Dust Bowl is a big one. And like, take a look at how America deals with natural disasters. Like, we all remember Hurricane Katrina, right? Do we think that the American government did a bang-up job on Hurricane Katrina? So I wanted to bring this one forward because I think this is actually a really interesting story coming out of the Toronto Star, right? And I think I'm more impressed with the source than I am with the article. But communist candidate Fraser focused on climate change, economy, and impoverishment, right? And the article basically is just a boilerplate, like, let's talk about who this guy is, what he is, right? Let's talk to this guy. It's very straightforward. And they're not talking to him. They're not talking to him in the kind of like damning, like, oh, isn't communist failure? Like, does it? They're actually taking him seriously as a candidate. They're actually like writing an article about what he stands for and what he wants to do. They're not attempting to demonize him, right? They're letting him have his say. A bit of a surprise, honestly, from the Toronto Star, right? The Toronto Star is widely, used to be considered a liberal newspaper, but is now owned by conservatives. So I'm very surprised to see them publish, I wouldn't call it a pro-communist article, but it is just like, it would be as if they were talking to an NDP candidate, right? They're just like, oh, you're from the NDP, what do you stand for, what do you do, what are you interested in, what are people saying to you, all that kind of stuff. And here they are with an article from a communist. And they're just same boilerplate, kind of like, who are you, what are you doing, all that kind of stuff. Very surprising to see in the Toronto Star, honestly. So I think the establishment sees that there is a rising communist sentiment, that the Communist Party of Canada seems to be organizing itself a little bit more. It seems to be gathering power and gathering weight. And it also seems to be taking over in places like the NDP party. It's getting to be a prominent enough threat that even people like Stephen Harper, when he's in debates, brings up Marxist-Leninism, right? He doesn't get asked about it. He brings it up. And so what we're doing here is having an impact. It's having an impact. They're starting to get scared of it because they know what our end game is. We're very upfront about it. That we should take power away from them and put them in jail, right? We're very upfront about it. And the thing is that they're well aware that they should go to prison. Like, this is the other part of it that I think doesn't get discussed a lot, which is that these guys understand that they're criminals. Like, they know that they're running grifts. They understand that they should go to jail. You have to be kind of daft to think otherwise, right? That, like, if you are ExxonMobil and you've been running a grift on the populace, a massive disinformation campaign in order to destroy the society, you know what you're doing. You're well aware of what you're doing. And you know you're a criminal. You know you're doing it for money for yourself. And you know all it's going to take is a political takeover for you to end up in jail, which is where I hope they end up. That's my goal. Like, that's what I'd be saying. If suddenly we were seizing the halls of power and like actually gaining seats and all this kind of stuff, I would outright be telling people, yeah, we should arrest these guys and have them tried at the Hague and they should go to jail, right? Like, that should be obvious. We should be saying that in the House, right? That's obvious. These people are obviously criminals and they know that they're criminals. Like, they know that they're criminals. That's why they're scared, because they know that a force like ours that can come up can send them to jail. It's happened before. We've seen it happen, right? And I suggest we do it again. Sooner rather than later. Sooner rather than later. I mean, they're in breadlines right now, yeah, for God's sakes. Man, I think about the Pilgrims and realize that the whole religious freedom colonization was started by religions too crazy for Europe. Yeah, the Puritans have been a real problem. Been a real problem. Like, imagine living in a society where just things were chiller, where like literally like if a woman's boob popped out, nobody like lost their fucking mind about it. Like if a mother was breastfeeding her child on a bench, no one would be like about it. Like literally no one. Imagine living in that society. Imagine living in a society where like you're walking down the street and you know, if you saw a homeless person, you would be like, hey, what's up with the homeless person? Why are they there? And you go talk to somebody and be like, oh shit, and they go get that person a house. Like, imagine living in that society where there was no concern whatsoever about do they earn it, right? What do they deserve? Like all of these like holdovers from the Puritans, right? The idea that somebody needs to deserve it or prove themselves worthy of having like base sustenance. To me, that's just despicable. It's like it's beyond religion. Like it is just like plunging in to the most sociopathic lizard brain part of who we are. To be like, oh, they need to prove that they're here, right? Like, what are you fucking talking about? So, like, you're literally implanting your own opinion of that person's right to life, and you're superseding the world itself, right? To put it in religious terms, you are putting yourself above your God. Like, get the fuck right out of here. It's embarrassing, is what it is. I was responding to Mock's comment with the fact that democracy wasn't a failure, the fact that the other fascist regimes failed. I mean, democracy has failed in the past, right? That the way democracies tend to go out is a powerful demagogue. So like Hitler, for example. Like Hitler rose to power in a democracy, right? Never forget that. Like Hitler rose to power in a democracy. And same story for somebody like Julius Caesar, right? Caesar rises to power in a democracy, and then both of these guys dismantle the democracy. And I mean, in the case of Julius Caesar, there's like an argument to be made that the democracy itself wasn't like an actual democracy. It was just white landowners, basically. But that's essentially what the American system is, right? The American system is essentially just white landowners talking to one another, right? Just trying to find a way to make sure that the rabble doesn't take over. Yeah, Puritan equals TV evangelicus. Yeah, good job, everyone. Yeah. No, there's like really corrosive ways of thinking about the world that exist in the mainstream. And straight up, the idea that somebody needs to prove to anybody, that there needs to be a means test of any sort to prove to somebody that you are valid enough to get food and shelter, is probably the most evil thing that we've done. Like, it's very, very sinister to say to your populace that you have to prove that you have the right to exist. Like, what are you even talking about? Like, it's so obvious that you're doing that so that you can keep your mafia grip on people's labor and enslave them. Like, it's so obviously a tool to enslave people. Like, and it is obvious. Right? It's like tragically obvious. I feel like the greatest grift that we're undergoing these days is people seem to think that they're not wage slaves when obviously they are. Like it's obvious. It just they refuse to be confronted with the truth. That they refuse to be confronted with that. No, we're all in this together, right? Like, yeah, we're all in this together. Oh, you just need to get a better job. So here's an act of desperation. Obama endorses Trudeau ahead of election. I'm proud of the work we did together. So this really only plays to like the true believers, right? Like the people who genuinely actually thought that Obama was a decent leader. Like the people who are still on like the hope and change train, who actually think that Obama actually gave a shit about American citizens, actually gave a shit, actually attempted in any way to meaningfully change the way the system operated. Like, well, and like, Obama's an imperialist, right? Like he expanded the war. He expanded the wars from 2 wars to 7, right? Like he's his game is exactly the same as Trudeau's game, which is like speak well and convince gullible rubes that I'm actually interested in helping you, right? They're completely incrementalist. They're completely disinterested in actually confronting systems of power. They both work for finance capital, right? They both work, like Obama works for Wall Street, Trudeau works for Bay Street. Like it's the same arrangement. You can go listen to Trudeau's speeches. He's very explicit about it. He has explicitly said on several occasions that he works with these financial institutions with the understanding that if the relationship between the Liberals and Bay Street doesn't work out, that something more serious can come Bay Street's way. And something more serious should come Bay Street's way, right? Like, those guys are part of the system too. Like, So it's nice to hear Justin Trudeau admit that there is a looming threat coming from the left. And that's what this election was. It was just a gambit. It was just a hope that he could seize the majority and hold off the surging left for another 4 years. Yeah, Obama endorses Trudeau. Exactly, Vince. Exactly, right? Like, oh, and who's this convincing? Like, who do you think? Do you think there's going to be a sudden surge in the polls? So to me, this is just an act of desperation, right? That they're just sort of hoping that, like, maybe we can catch some tailwind. Is there literally anybody who thinks Obama was a good president? Like, I think he was an important cultural figure, right? He ends up being an important kind of cultural figure, that it was good that America actually elects a black man. Like, that's like, we can't elect a Sikh, right? So the Americans are actually a touch ahead of us in that regard, right? Like, we're not going to elect a Sikh. So America elects a black man. It's a good cultural moment for them, right? But outside of that, he was straight up part of the military-industrial complex. The bill that he put forward, the Obamacare bill, was literally Mitt Romney's bill. Like, no, we're not going to end up in a majority, dude. We're not going to end up in a majority. Here, if you're sitting there, I got it. We're going to dive a little bit deep into that again, because I don't want anybody to walk away thinking, like, the C projection right now is 145. So we're back where we started, right? We're essentially back where we started. The Liberals are going to lose a little bit of power. The Conservatives are going to gain a little bit. The NDP are going to gain a little bit. And the thing that has me saying that I'm pretty confident that this is the way it's going to go, is because it's been like this for about 4 or 5 days now, right? Like, it's been this way. There was almost no change whatsoever from the debates. And it seems as though the debates really just kind of like tightened everything up for everybody. And this is what it looks like, right? That in this period of time here, where the Conservatives were like surging in the polls and it looked like, oh God, they could go to their majority. Well, it planed right out. You see the same thing happen for the NDP in that period of time, where it surged up and then everything kind of planed back down, right? Same story for the NDP. They had their little moment and then they kind of went back down, right? And you can see, especially throughout this period of time, like that they're actually a little bit lower on aggregate than the rest of them. You have this little blip up for the PPC. To me, this is the big story of this election, is the rise of the PPC. You can see it very clearly. They're polling down here. They're polling down here. And right when everybody's like, let's get angry about it, right? Well, the anger kept going for the PPC, right? The anger kept going for the PPC. The anger diffused out of the Conservatives, right? And now PPC are polling higher, right? Down here, up here now. The lowest they do is about here. So the lowest that the PPC does now is about the highest that they used to poll at. So it's been a significant change. Yeah, what's happening in Alberta with the Vax Pass? The PPC are only getting stronger. Yep, they are a legitimate threat. They are a legitimate threat, and they need to be treated as such. We need to do away with this idea that we can just like, ha ha ha, what a foolish thing, right? Nope. They really found their stride in this election. They have really found the issues that have galvanized them. They really, it's their anger that's driving them, right? That they are past denial. That in terms of this issue, like they deny several things, right? They deny the existence of climate change. They deny the existence of systemic racism, those sorts of things. That the most dangerous denial that they have is the denial of systems, right? That everything is just an individual doing an individual thing, right? And so the denial of systems is where they're most dangerous, because if somebody took control of the system that is obviously here and in place, while denying the existence of systems, they can only fuck it up. Like you can't successfully run a system that you deny the existence of, right? And I think one seat is pretty likely. I think one seat is actually fairly likely. That the aggregate, like the pollsters here don't want to give them a seat. And I think it's because a lot of their support is actually, it's quite diffuse, right? That they're polling at 6% nationally, but they're not like actually in one spot. You know what I mean? That's sort of the saving grace. Is that like the Greens only poll at 3.3, but they're in one spot, So they're able to sort of maintain that position. So, but this is a big learning experience for Maxime, and I think Maxime will probably do exactly what I just said, which is that he'll start to hyper-focus on one riding. Because getting one seat is a big fucking deal. It's a big fucking deal for a political party to get a seat. And so Maxime Bernier getting a seat could happen in this election. Could happen. And to me, that would be the story of the election. That if Maxime Bernier and the PPC actually get a seat, we got to be talking about that. That's a big deal. It's a fucking big deal. Other stories that are going to come out, I think that Annamie Paul is going to step down. She's been talking about stepping down. And I think once you start talking about stepping down, that is the end of it. Like, you don't kind of start talking about stepping down and then don't, right? The only thing that stops somebody from stepping down is if their party goes, no, we need you, right? Like, but that's not happening. That's not happening. I think Bernier will win boost. You think? Are you in that area, bud? Because like, people with their boots on the ground know more. They know more about what's going on. I like the way you say denial of systems. That really cuts to the heart of the neoliberal ideology. I'm stealing it. Yeah, it's the truth though. Like it's what these guys do. They deny that systems exist, which is how they can simultaneously decry a system of globalist elites while espousing solutions that sell us out completely to those globalist elite, right? Like, really, really think about that. They are literally saying, there are a bunch of globalist elites that are making decisions without us, but all we need to do to solve our problems is get better jobs. So there's no comprehension of any system. Like, there's no comprehension at all that there's a system in play at all, right? And if they were to seize power, these corporate interests would absolutely use them as a tool. If you're that clueless, like, that's a big hill to climb. It is an enormous hill to climb to come out of there are no systems to there are systems. And then once you get to there are systems, then you begin saying, okay, what are the systems? What do they look like? Right? And if you are there, these corporate guys are going to just totally fucking ramrod you. They're going to totally fucking ramrod you. Like, and it's really obvious that that's what's going to happen. Oh yeah, the cons can't bring back Harper. That won't fly. They know that won't fly. That's a dead on arrival. I have family friends living there, and they have PP signs everywhere, like literally every corner. We'll see. Yeah. Hey, and all it's going to take, right, is one of these small rural ridings, right? And the thing we know about the PPC is that they are very angry. They're very angry. All the polling indicates that, like, nationally, people answer the question, I'm angry, about 30% to about 35%. The PPC is at about 70%. So they are angry, and they are motivated by anger, right? Because, as I was trying to say earlier, right, they're through the denial phase, which is to say that they no longer deny, like, they know that something's gone wrong. In my view, this fact alone actually puts the PPC ahead of the Liberals and the Conservatives. That the Liberals and the Conservatives are still walking around saying everything's fine, we can just incrementally reform our way out of things, let's negotiate with the sun. The PPC, at least, is saying something's gone wrong. Right? So they're through the denial phase. They are no longer denying that everything is hunky-dory. Right? Now they're in anger town. And angry people don't really think. Right? They're not really thinking things through. They're just angry. And let's not fool ourselves, guys. Like, go listen to the PPC speakers. They are very effective. Especially someone like Mike Frazier. Right? These are very effective speakers. And they are effective because many of them genuinely believe what they say, right? So that makes them very dangerous. Because much of what they say and much of what they believe is deeply rooted in a system, which they deny, a system of white supremacy, right? Where they end up saying things like, we need to come together in unity, but we're not going to do truth and reconciliation, right? So we will come together in unity so long as these minority groups subserviate themselves to white people and to the system of white supremacy. And if you don't acknowledge the existence of systems, then you don't need to dismantle them, right? And this anger is absolutely driving these guys forward. And they can seize a lot. Anger gets you pretty far. It can get you. That's why I've been saying of the NDP for like since Tom Mulcair. Since Tom Mulcair, I've been saying you gotta galvanize this anger. There is an anger in the populace. It's obvious that the anger is there, and the NDP just refused to do it. And at this point, I think you can call it a refusal, right? Like, how do you miss it? How do you miss the anger? It's there. It's obvious. We poll, right? Like, how do you miss it? And they just refuse to do it, and they're gonna pay for it. Is there a connection between COVID and conservative PPC predomination voter areas? There definitely is a connection here in the US. Yeah, for sure. Like, for sure. Well, and Jagmeet Singh seizing power in the NDP has actually turned out to be probably the worst case scenario for the NDP. Like, he can't galvanize the anger of the populace because then white Canada can turn around and be like, oh, he's trying to do Sharia law, right? And even though that's nonsensical and doesn't make any fucking sense at all, it'll play, right? It'll play. Like, you can't have like an angry man in a turban, right? And so Jagmeet's doing what he can, trying to move forward with like, yeah, hey, I'm a rational guy. I've got good policies. But like, Canadians are not voting for a man in a turban. It's just what's happening. And I am beginning to notice and speculate. I'm beginning to realize that I'm going to have to make a series of videos and direct them pretty heavily towards the NDP directly and become the bad guy. I'm going to have to become known as the bad guy in NDP circles because the NDP are being very delusional on this point. Like, I've begun going into NDP subreddits. I've begun like seeing people on Twitter and all this kind of stuff, and they're like asking for critiques. Like, how can we get more voters out and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, how do we do it? Like, NDP all the way. Ha 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 ha. I'm like, white Canadians are not going to vote for a man with a turban. They're just not going to do it. Like, that's how it is. And if you don't actually take this issue head on and accept the fact that white Canadians are not going to vote for a man in a turban, then you're never going to get anywhere, right? That, like, Jagmeet Singh is going to have to make ads. He's going to have to make ads, like national ads. And it's going to have to be, like, his number one issue that he's talking about. He's going to have to talk about it, right? Because it's the reason he's not getting support. Like, it's not going to be an adjustment of his policies. It's not going to be a change. He doesn't need to interact more with people and, like, just make a better case or all that kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. He's wearing a turban. Canadians aren't going to vote for it. You got to talk about it. I have an ad. Here's the ad, right? You just take like a Bubbles kind of Canadian, right? Like, just like a dumb Canadian. You can put a toque on him, all that kind of stuff. Give him a pamphlet, right? Give him 3 pamphlets: conservative, liberal, NDP. And then he goes, who am I going to vote for? Conservatives, liberal. I don't. Well, what's this NDP? Oh, raise taxes on the wealthy. Dental care. Oh, wow, the NDP want to do a whole bunch of stuff, and have him like literally like run down the street and be like, oh, the NDP, they want to do so much. Oh my goodness, they're so great. Well, all this kind of stuff. And then he goes and he finds a friend and a buddy. And he goes, look at what the NDP are saying. And then his buddy just kind of looks at him like this, grabs the pamphlet, flips him over, and it's Jagmeet Singh on the pamphlet. And the guy looks at it and goes, oh. And he looks at his buddy, and his buddy's like getting one of these. And he goes, well, never mind. Who are you going to vote for? And then just have Jagmeet Singh be like, really? And that's it. That's the whole fucking commercial, right? Because these guys aren't voting for him. And they're not voting for him for a very specific issue. It's because they take one look at him and they say, ah. So you either face it on directly or just abandon ship, dude. Like, abandon ship. Like, sorry to say it, white Canadians are not ready. We're not there. We're not in a hope and change sort of place where we're willing to bro down on a dude wearing a turban. And it's a shame. It's a goddamn shame, but it's the truth. And these NDP are walking around pretending like something else is happening. And it's time to wake up and smell the turban. Matthew Green could do it, though, I think. How is Matthew Green doing? Where is Matthew Green? Matthew Green. Matthew Green. Matthew Green. Matthew Green. Matthew Green. Oh, yeah, I remember Matthew Green. Yep. Well, yeah, I mean, it's... They want to believe that Canada is more progressive than it actually is, okay? Like... Just for God's sakes, Justin Trudeau came out in front of all of us wearing blackface. Justin Trudeau came out in front of all of us wearing blackface. Literally like, zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of feelings coming my way. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day. I think that was the wrong song, but like, you get the point. And we all just went, ooh, that's racist. And so we all took a look over to the right, and we said, oh, the Conservatives, no, that's racist. Oh, no, thank you. And then we all took a look over to the left at the NDP and went, what's with the turban? And then gave Justin Trudeau a minority government. Like we don't give a fuck. Like, what if we're not going to put this, if the NDP are not going to put this together, if they're not going to put this together, that, like, we literally saw Justin Trudeau come out in blackface and he's still the leader of our country. Like, if they can't put together that, guess what, guys? We're fucking racists. Canada has systemic racism. Canada is full of fucking racists. It'd be one thing if he was just brown with a really, really big beard. The turban though, the turban though, the turban though. We're not ready for it. We're not ready for it. And if you're not going to tell us, if you're not going to go out there and actually punch out and be like, really, the turban? Like, this is the thing? Like, this is the thing. So you don't want better health care. You don't want to tax the wealthy. You don't want to actually confront the system of capital that's actually killing you. You don't want to defund the fossil fuel industry and transition to a green economy. You want your civil services cut. You want to experience austerity. You want all of that because literally you can't stomach voting for a dude who's wearing a turban. And the answer to that is yes. That's exactly where Canada is. So my message to you, Jagmeet Singh, because you're for sure gonna watch this, is that you gotta fucking take it head on. You have to. You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. If you don't take it head on, if you don't make the ads, if you don't confront it, if you don't talk about it, if you're not bringing it up on the debate stage, if you're not saying outright, really, you're not voting for me because of the turban, if you're not making that case, resign. Get the fuck out of here. Make way for someone who's actually going to be the leader of the country. Because unless you're willing to do that, you're not gonna. You're not gonna. Right? This is Jagmeet Singh's biggest hurdle. There isn't a bigger hurdle than this one. It is his biggest hurdle. And it's time to fucking go for it, dude. It's time to fucking go for it. Good luck, bud. You're going to need it. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Vince. My beautiful... I've been wanting this haircut for so long, dude. I've been wanting this haircut for so long. I love this side of my of the hair, right? This has always been wonderful, always. But this side was always like kind of clowny and like kind of like straight and like kind of floovy and all that kind of stuff. And I noticed that when I pulled it right back and it was like really close to my head and I looked in, I liked the way it looked. So I just said, just shave it, just get rid of it. And now it's just like, I feel so like, I kind of feel fabulous. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like a little bit like I'm just like, look at me. I'm just a fabulous queen. That's how I feel. That's how I feel. Hey DM, how you doing, bud? Hello, John and fellow comrades. Sorry I'm late to the party. Hope I didn't miss much. Still voting NDP. I still think voting NDP is the way to go. I still think that voting NDP is the way to go. If only to scare the shit out of the conservatives and the liberals. Right? No, I'm not shaving the other side. This is beautiful. This is too beautiful. I'm not going to shave the other side. Yeah, I think that voting NDP is the best way to go just to scare the shit out of the conservatives and the liberals. Like, both the conservatives and the liberals lost this election, right? Like, let's be really clear about this. Neither the liberals or the conservatives are walking away from this election considering it a victory, right? Both of them are upset with the way this went, and that's good for us. It's good that the liberals and the conservatives are walking away from this election with an L, right? They can't win. They can't actually get their majority, right? They can't. Not with these campaigns that they've been running, right? Not with this shitty situation going on. And the idea that the NDP are actually gaining seats in this is a problem for them, right? It's a problem for them. Like, both the conservatives and the liberals are losers here. And it's really, really clear that that's the case. And neither of them is going to be happy. And that should make us both that should make everybody very happy. If the conservatives and the liberals are upset at the outcome, good. Fucking good. I could talk about the haircut for forever, as you guys can tell. I got to be careful. There's a couple issues that I can just like talk about forever. Okay, guys, my puppy is starting to lose his little mind. I got to take him down. I think I'm going to close this down a couple of minutes early. I hope you guys are doing really well out there. What a strange and odd time it is to be alive right now. I hope that you're organizing. I hope that you're working with people. I hope that you're making a flyer. I hope that you're actually trying to get out into the streets, because that's what we are going to be doing. That's what we have to be doing. Everybody's got to be getting out into the streets, and it's us that needs to organize it. There's nobody else that's doing it. I was told to expect a delay of election results by several days. Yeah, due to mail-in. Yeah, I don't see why it should be any different than these results. How much did the NDP go up in the ratings? Nah, they're about the same. Everybody's about the same. Like, everybody's like, this is just it. Like, literally, the outcome of this election is like basically the same. Any party that serves neoliberal capitalism is going to have a bad time going forward, increasingly so. Yeah. Well, as young people get older and as old people die, right? And let's not fool ourselves. Like, the COVID throughout the United States has changed demographics. You don't lose 600,000 voters and have it not change things, right? And most of those people are, Republican voters. It's just the truth. Okay, guys, I'm closing it down. You guys are wonderful. Each and every one of you is beautiful. You are a divine being standing in divine energy. These billionaires spend billions of dollars to convince you otherwise. Don't let them. Good luck. We're going to need it.